Chapter 1108. What was said, alright, it's fine as long as the bedroom is livable. The one speaking was one of the older masters from House Pi, who was called Master Pi. He waved his hand. Just make the training room downstairs better. Don't worry, Master Pi, it's all ready. Just tell us what you need and we'll buy it for you. Xiaoji said quickly. At that moment, the doorbell of the Xiao family's villa rang. Big brother, go see who's coming. I'll stay here with the two masters. Xiaobin gave Xiaoji a look. Xiaoji also knew his own weight. He was afraid that his uncouth character would say something inappropriate, so he was happy to leave Xiaobin here. He went to see who had come to visit the Xiao family. That afternoon, after the news got out, there were a lot of rich houses calling to say that they wanted to work with the Xiao family. It wasn't a surprise that someone was visiting. Xiaoji arrogantly went downstairs. He opened the door of the villa and looked outside, but he was slightly stunned. What he didn't expect was that it was Kong Guifeng and Kong Xiaolong, father and son, standing outside. Xiaoji may be an uncouth man, but he wasn't an idiot. He knew what House Kang's intentions were, of course, thinking back to the humiliation he'd suffered outside House Kang's villa. Xiaoji's anger flared. Fine, I haven't even gone looking for you yet, and you've come knocking on my door. If I don't make fun of you this time, I'll be sorry for your hospitality last time. Isn't this the Kong father and son? What business do you have with the Xiao family? Kong Guifeng and Xiaoji's words were still fresh in his mind, so this time, Xiaoji returned the same words back to them. Kong Guifeng and Xiaolong's heart skipped a beat as they listened to Xiaoji's words. It seemed like things were going to be as they'd expected. Xiao bro, what are you saying? Aren't we related by marriage? What's wrong with that? Kong Guifeng said with a smile. Related by marriage? Who is related to you by marriage? When did our families become in-laws? Kong Guifeng, do you have a bad memory? Did you remember wrongly? Xiaoji laughed coldly in his heart. Now you know that we are in-laws? What were you doing earlier? Don't you have a bad memory? Alright then, you can continue on your way. Big brother Xiao. Don't be angry. My memory is indeed a little bad. The last time you came to my house, I was muddle-headed and didn't remember. When I went back and told Xiaolong about it, I finally remembered that our families are actually in-laws. Kong Guifeng said awkwardly. Fortunately, the reason he said before was that he had a bad memory. Now, he could use this reason as an excuse. Kong Guifeng. I really don't know what nonsense you are talking about here. Xiaoji laughed coldly and said, there are too many people who want to be connected to the Xiao family. Who knows if it's true or not? What's more, you're talking about a marriage alliance. Who are you going to marry? How come I don't know? You've been talking for so long and you still haven't made yourself clear. Our Xiao family is all male and you're trying to get married. I may be called Xiaoji, but I'm not gay. Kong Guifeng was speechless. Xiaoji's words were a little vulgar, but the logic was clear. He didn't know them, so leave. Alright, stop it. Alright, stop it. If you have proof of our engagement, then take it out. If not, then get the fuck out. I don't have time for you. Two masters came to my house, and one of them is a mystic late phase peak. Don't blame me if you come here to cause trouble again. Xiaoji threatened impatiently. With that, Xiaoji ignored Kong Guifeng and Xiaolong and went back into the villa. He slammed the door shut, leaving the Kangs outside. Kong Guifeng looked at the Xiao family's door and sighed heavily. He shook his head. It seems like it's hopeless. They don't want to talk to us at all. Father, why don't we try again? After all, we've decided to make some sacrifices and tell them the conditions. Maybe Xiao family will change their mind? Xiaolong didn't want to give up. Didn't you hear what Xiaoji said? There are two masters in their house, and one of them is a mystic late phase peak. Among all the noble houses, only House Yu has masters like that. If Xiao family has such strength, why would they need us to work with them? There are a lot of people who want to work with them and we're not in the queue. Kong Guifeng smiled bitterly. They've made it clear that they don't care about us. Xiao family isn't what it used to be, and we're of no use anymore. But I don't want to give up just like this. Xiaolong clenched his fist. So what? If Xiao family wanted to accept us, they wouldn't be treating us like this. There's no point in saying anything now. Let's go back. Kong Guifeng was quite open-minded. In fact, he didn't want to stand here and be humiliated anymore. Xiaolong nodded and got in the car with his father, leaving with his tail between his legs. Xiaolong didn't want to give up just like this, but what else could he do? They wouldn't give him a chance. After Xiaoji ran back to the villa, he conveyed everything that happened to his second brother, Xiao Ben. After Xiao Ben heard it, he felt that it was a pity. We can make the Kong family bleed a lot and give us some compensation. After all, we are short of funds now, his second brother. Now that we have 2 masters from House Pai in our Xiao family, we don't have to worry about funds. When the time comes, there will be many people who want to cooperate with us. Why should we mix with the Kong family, the treacherous people? Xiaoji said disapprovingly, I've said it before, they're blind. Even if they came to lick my toes, I wouldn't leave them alone. That's right, at least we got our revenge. You're right, with our Xiao family's current strength, we don't have to worry about partners. Xiao Ben nodded and put the matter to the back of his mind. The news of the Xiao family naturally reached Lin Yi's ears. Lin Yi didn't pay attention to the noble houses, but Faubert was well informed in Songshan. The hidden House Pai supporting the Xiao family wasn't good news for House Chu. Chapter 1109. Erguden is here. House Xiao has the support of the hidden House Pai. Do you know about this? When Faubert called, Lin Yi had just sent Xiao Xiao and Tang Yun home and was driving back to the villa. Hidden House Pai? Lin Yi paused. Is it the same as the hidden House Yu and House Xiao? Lin Yi didn't know much about the structure of the hidden houses. Yes, the hidden House Pai is stronger than the hidden House Xiao. I heard that the Pai Elder is an Earth-class late-phase peak, just 1 step away from Sky-class, but it's just a rumor. After all, there's no proof. Plus, House Pai is a physical practitioner, so there's still a gap between them and spiritual practitioners. Faubert summarized what he knew to Lin Yi. The Pai Elder is just 1 step away from Sky-class? Lin Yi frowned. He didn't expect the hidden House Pai to be this strong. One had to know that it was extremely hard to improve once a physical practitioner reached the late phase. Physical practitioners were different from spiritual practitioners. Spiritual practitioners relied on qi and treasures to increase their strength, but physical practitioners relied on constant training of the body to increase their strength. In other words, spiritual practitioners could train by themselves, but once a physical practitioner reached a certain level, they would need someone to train with them in order to increase their strength and find an opportunity to break through. To put it bluntly, physical practitioners were similar to boxing and sanda. If you wanted to improve, you needed a sparring partner, and you couldn't do it by yourself. The old man from House Pai was only 1 step away from Sky Class. In other words, other than the old man from House Pai, there should be another person who was as strong as him training with him. This meant that House Pai's power couldn't be underestimated. Yes, but from the looks of it, House Pai and Xiao family are just partners. Xiao family won't use House Pai to take revenge on us yet. Faubert said. Right, how strong are the practitioners House Pai sent to Xiao family? Lin Yi asked. One is Mystic Late Phase Peak and one is Mystic Early Phase, both physical practitioners, Faubert said. Mystic Early Phase isn't a problem, but Mystic Late Phase Peak. This is a bit troublesome. Lin Yi's eyebrows locked together. He was a Mystic Mid-Phase spiritual practitioner, and he had some confidence against Mystic Late Phase Peak or Mystic Late Phase physical practitioners. But if the opponent was Mystic Late Phase Peak, Lin Yi didn't have much confidence. Unless he used the energy bomb, the ultimate killing move, but it was a move that would kill 1,000 enemies and himself at the cost of 800. He wouldn't use it unless he had no other choice. After all, the consequences were too dangerous, and he had to think about it carefully. That's right. If only I could regain my strength at my peak. Faubert sighed and said helplessly, if I break through to Mystic now, even if it's early phase, I'd be able to help. With the 2 of us working together, we wouldn't be afraid of that Mystic Late Phase Peak. But right now, although I'm only 1 step away from Mystic, I'm still a level away. Lin Yi nodded after hearing Faubert's words. Indeed, although he could fight enemies stronger than him, Faubert couldn't. He benefited from the purity of the pure qi he absorbed, as well as his mental cultivation. It'd be great if he could let Faubert use the qi and the jade, but it wasn't easy. Energy was different from other things. Lin Yi even wondered if he could store the energy in the bottle, but that wasn't practical. We'll deal with it when they come. I'm not afraid of them, Linny didn't have much confidence, but to give Faubert confidence, he could only say that, "I'll keep an eye on them. As long as they don't come looking for trouble, we'll let them be," Faubert replied. In actuality, Xiaoji and Xiaoben did want to cause trouble for House Chu and Lin Yi. They were drooling over House Chu's wealth. Their original plan was perfect. House Pai would definitely get revenge for Uncle Pai, and then they'd naturally go looking for trouble with House Chu. But now it seemed like House Pai didn't care about Uncle Pai's life at all. Whether it was Pai Jishan or Pai Jihai, or the two masters that came later, none of them had any intention of visiting Uncle Pai in the hospital. So although Xiaoji and Xiaoben had this idea, they didn't dare make any rash decisions. After all, Pai Jishan had made it clear that the masters of House Pai would only help when the Xiao family was in trouble. They weren't the fighters of the Xiao family, so Xiaoji and Xiaoben didn't dare order them to do anything. "Brother, why don't we discuss with Master Pai and Brother Pai, and go looking for trouble with House Chu? That would count as getting some money?" Xiaoji waited for the two masters from House Pai to settle down before going to the study with Xiaoben to discuss the future of the Xiao family. "We can't, the two masters from House Pai are different from Uncle Pai. Master Pai said very clearly that they'll only help when we're in trouble. We can't order them to do anything, can we?" Xiaoben said. "But we're asking for money from House Chu because we want to do business for House Pai. House Pai's benefits are closely related to us now." Xiaoji said. "That's true, but we're not familiar with the two Pai masters yet. We don't know their temperament yet. Even if we were to make a move, we'd have to wait until we're familiar with them. At that time, things will be much easier." Xiaoben said. "Right now, our Xiao family doesn't have to worry about money at all. Anyone who wants to work with us will provide us with money." "That's right, it'll be easier once we're familiar with them." Xiaoji nodded. "You have good eyes, brother." This was the first time Gooden left his house. On the train, he remembered Grandpa Lin's words and didn't say a word, only doing his own thing. There were a few scammers on the train that had their eyes on Gooden, but seeing that he didn't care about anyone, they all gave up. There was nothing they could do. To them, a country bumpkin like Gooden was the hardest to deal with. He didn't talk and he didn't sleep. There was no way they could take advantage of him. And so, Gooden was safe and sound on the way to Songshan's train station. Chapter 11:10. The orphanage is desperate, but if the event didn't end, Xiaoka wouldn't have a source of income. She had earned quite a bit of money a while ago, but no one had accepted the mission she posted on the website. Even if she wanted to earn extra money, there was no way she could do it. She could only sit on the bed and sigh at the sky. "Xiaoka, why are you looking so sad? The kitchen's done cooking, why aren't you eating? The kids are waiting for you." The dean pushed open Xiaoka's door and walked in. "Dean, I'm not hungry. You guys eat first." Xiaoka shook her head. As Xiaoka's source of income was cut off, the orphanage's days were getting worse and worse. Almost every meal was potato and cabbage, and the portions were getting smaller and smaller. The last few thousand of the orphanage's money was used to buy some potatoes and cabbage, as well as some rice and noodle. These things were easy to store, and they could get a lower price if they bought them in bulk. These were the leftover vegetables from last autumn, and since the new vegetables were coming soon, the sellers were selling them at a lower price. But while the vegetables were cheap, the rice and noodle were expensive. Xiaoka tried her best to eat vegetables and not rice, but she felt disgusted. She really didn't want to eat today, she could save some food. "Xiaoka, look at how skinny you are. How can you not be hungry? If your body collapses, what will happen to the kids?" How could the dean not know what Xiaoka was thinking? But wasn't she the same? Seeing the rice and noodle decreasing day by day, the dean was worried as well. But even if she was worried, she couldn't stop Xiaoka from eating. "Okay, I'll go eat then." Xiaoka nodded. But the more they did this, the more trouble they had. There was a saying that misfortune never comes alone. The orphanage didn't have money, but they needed it when they didn't have it. Not long after the meal, a kid got acute appendicitis from playing soccer. Xiaoka and Qin quickly brought the kid to the hospital. But when they got there, Xiaoka suddenly remembered that she was out of money. In this period of time, the orphanage's savings had been used up, and Xiaoka didn't have a single cent in her hands. These days, the hospital wasn't a charity organization, and without money, they wouldn't be able to perform the surgery. Xiaoka knew this very well. Luckily, Xiaoka had some acquaintances in the hospital, such as Nurse Wang Sis. But knowing people didn't mean that she didn't need to spend money. What Xiaoka could do was ask Nurse Wang to do the surgery for the child, and then Xiaoka would go and collect the money. Even so, Xiaoka was very grateful. Seeing the sick child being pushed into the surgery room, Xiaoka finally let out a breath of relief. She turned to the nurse beside her. "Nurse Wang, thank you so much. It's nothing. It's just a piece of cake. But Xiaoku, you still have to pay the medical fees as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the hospital leaders blame me, I can't afford it," said Nurse Wang. "I know, Nurse Wang. I just left in a hurry and didn't bring any money with me. I'll go back and get the money now." Xiaoka didn't tell the nurse about her predicament. Nurse Wang was already helping her a lot, so why would she give her more trouble? Nurse Wang was just a normal nurse, and her monthly salary wasn't high. Xiaoka couldn't possibly ask her for money. "Alright, I'll leave first. I still have things to do, and I'm the only one in the nurse's room. I can't leave for too long." Nurse Wang didn't think too much about it. She knew Xiaoka's occupation, and from her perspective, Xiaoka didn't lack money. "Okay, then go back to your work. We'll be fine here." Xiaoka nodded. After Nurse Wang left, Xiaoka sighed and turned to Xiao Ken. "Xiao Ken, you stay here. I'll go back to the orphanage to get some money." "Xiaoka sis, you don't need to lie to me. I know that the orphanage doesn't have any money, right?" Ken hesitated and looked at Xiaoka. "Ken, you know about it?" Xiaoka nodded slightly, not denying it. Ken was the oldest child in the orphanage, and his mind was mature. Naturally, he could tell that something was wrong with the orphanage. "Yes, Xiaoka sis. Is there anything I can do to help?" Ken raised his head and gathered his courage to ask. In his heart, he had always had a crush on Xiaoka, but he knew that he wasn't good enough for Xiaoka. However, the children in the orphanage treated Xiaoka as their goddess and idol since they were young, and that was understandable. Even if he knew it wasn't realistic, he still wanted to share some of Xiaoka's worries. "It's okay. Stay here and look after the orphanage. I'll go get some money." Xiaoka waved her hand. In her eyes, Ken would always be a child. Ken nodded, a little disappointed. As expected, Xiaoka always treated him as a child. "Okay, I'm here. Come back soon, Xiaoka sis." Ken nodded. Xiaoka ran out of the hospital quickly and saw the patrolling policeman on the street. She was in despair. It seemed like her plan to steal the wallet was going to fail. In actuality, Xiaoka didn't need to go to the streets to steal money. The hospital was the best place to do it. There were a lot of people with money there, but Xiaoka wasn't a bad thief. She had her own morals, and she couldn't bear to steal the money of the people in the hospital. Many of them were here to pay for their family and friends' medical fees. What would they do if she stole their money? This money might be the life-saving money for their family and friends. And so, Xiaoka left the hospital decisively and walked on the streets aimlessly. Unknowingly, Xiaoka followed the flow of people to the train station. This used to be Xiaoka's paradise. The train station used to be filled with scalpers, street vendors who dominated the market, and unscrupulous drivers who scammed tourists. These were all Xiaoka's targets. She didn't feel guilty at all when she stole their money. The money in their pockets was ill-gotten money, and she didn't feel guilty at all. Chapter 11:11. Medical expenses. Looking at the passers-by and the patrolling police gave Xiaoka a headache. She had to get some money for the medical expenses no matter what. She couldn't let Nurse Wang down. Xiaoka looked at the passers-by and could only force herself to look for a target. She only hoped that there were too many people here, and that the police wouldn't have enough people to pay attention to her. Very quickly, she found a target, a young man who had just come out of the train station. The young man was quite tall, but at a glance, one could tell that he came from the mountains. He was dressed very rustic, wearing a blue sleeveless shirt and black shorts. He belonged to the kind of rustic that couldn't be more rustic. It was obvious that this was his first time in the city, and he didn't have much experience in society. It was easy to make a move on him. It wasn't that Xiaoka didn't think about stealing money from those fat bosses, but those people were more meticulous, and it wouldn't be easy to make a move on them in a place like this. It was easy to make a move on a country bumpkin like this. But Xiaoka had never stolen money from a good person before. This young man was easy to make a move on, but it didn't fit Xiaoka's principles. Xiaoka followed behind him, hesitating. She didn't know if she should make a move or not. No matter what, she had to pay the money today. Xiaoka had already troubled Nurse Wang a lot, and she couldn't give her any more trouble. If she didn't pay, the hospital's leaders would scold Nurse Wang, and that wasn't something Xiaoka wanted to see. But Xiaoka really couldn't bear to make a move on this young man. He looked like a simple and honest villager, and Xiaoka felt that stealing his money would make her feel guilty. Unknowingly, Xiaoka had been following him for a while now, and she still couldn't make a move. "Why are you following me?" Xiaoka didn't make a move yet, but the young man suddenly turned around and looked at her weirdly. Gooden was quite troubled. What was this pretty girl doing behind him? In fact, Gooden had noticed it when Xiaoka was following him, but she was a pretty girl, and he didn't think of her as a bad person. He didn't care, thinking that they were just going the same way. But after walking for a while, Gooden purposely changed his direction and realized that Xiaoka was still following him. He couldn't help but ask. Gooden was an honest guy, but he'd been with Lin Yi since he was young. He wasn't a normal person. In the mountains, even the beasts that were good at hiding their presence couldn't escape Gooden's senses, much less Xiaoka. Gooden's sudden question gave Xiaoka quite a fright. Xiaoka didn't think that Gooden would notice her, and she didn't know what to do. After all, Xiaoka had a guilty conscience and quickly waved her hand. "It's nothing. It's nothing." Gooden frowned as he looked at Xiaoka. "Girl, is there something you need from me? If you have something to say, just say it. Don't be wishy-washy like a sissy." Haha. Xiaoka couldn't help but laugh at Gooden's words. She was a girl, right? "What are you laughing at? What do you want from me for?" Gooden was even more confused at Yu Xiaoxiao's reaction. She didn't know why, but she felt that this guy wasn't a bad person, and so she changed her mind. She didn't want to steal his money. I want to borrow some money from you." Xiaoka put away her smile and said seriously. Xiaoka was sure that this guy wasn't a bad person, and she didn't want to steal anymore. She wanted to borrow money from him. She really wanted to pay him back. "Borrow money? What do you need money for?" Gooden asked. "I have a kid with acute appendicitis, and I don't have money for surgery, so I want to borrow some money." Xiaoka didn't lie. "Oh, appendicitis? Surgery? That's a big deal." Gooden saw that Xiaoka didn't seem to be lying, and he panicked. "How much do you need?" How much do you have?" Xiaoka didn't think that Gooden would really lend her money. Gooden was a warm-hearted person, and even though old Lin told him that there were a lot of scammers out there, he felt that this girl didn't seem like one. She was very sincere and it shouldn't be fake. And so, he really did want to help her. In Star West Village, it was normal for people to borrow money from each other when they needed it. Gooden often lent money to the villagers, and so he treated Xiaoka as one of them. "I have around 1,900 here." Gooden bought some bread on the train, and other than that, he didn't spend much money. "That's about enough." Xiaoka calculated that this should be enough for surgery. Gooden didn't say anything as he took out a handkerchief and gave it to Xiaoka. "Here, you count it." "No need, thank you. I'll return it to you as soon as possible." Xiaoka was overjoyed as she took the bag, smiling as she waved at Gooden. "I'll be going then." "Okay, go. Saving a life is more important." Gooden nodded. Seeing Xiaoka's shadow disappear from the train station square, Gooden suddenly remembered something important. Boss Lin Yi's address was still in the handkerchief, and the note Grandpa Lin gave him was with the money. Wait. Gooden panicked. This was the only way to find Lin Yi boss. How was he supposed to find Lin Yi boss without the address? But Yu Xiaoka was nowhere to be seen. Xiaoka was long gone. Gooden slapped his forehead and helplessly sat down on a bench nearby. Now that he'd lost Lin Yi's contact, he could only sit here and wait for Xiaoka to return the money and give him the address. Xiaoka was a person who knew right from wrong. She was a thief, but she knew how to repay kindness. She knew that Gooden was a good person, and so she'd return the money as soon as possible. But when she got to the hospital, she suddenly remembered that she hadn't asked for Gooden's contact. She didn't even know his name. Chapter 11-12. Dine and Dash? But no matter what, she was back at the hospital. She couldn't go back to the train station right now. She needed to pay the money first. Xiaoka queued up and paid the surgery fee, but found a note in the handkerchief. There was an address and a phone number on it. Xiaoka's eyes lit up. Xiaoka's eyes lit up. Xiaoka's eyes lit up. So he'd given her the address already. Xiaoka relaxed, not as worried as before. Now that she had enough money, she'd go to this address and pay him back. Xiaoka carefully put away the piece of paper with the address and went to find Xiao Qin with the receipt. Gooden was waiting for Xiaoka at the train station. He was worried that she wouldn't be able to find him after he left. The money wasn't a big deal, but the important thing was the address with Linny Boss address. And so, Gooden didn't dare leave. He just sat on the bench. Time flew and the sky turned dark, and the sky turned dark again. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Xiaoka still wasn't back. Only now did Gooden realize that he'd been tricked. This big liar girl, she pisses me off, Gooden said angrily as he looked at the train station. It had been so long and Xiaoka still hadn't reappeared. No matter how honest he was, he knew that he'd been tricked. Gooden was troubled. Tricking money was one thing, but why didn't she give him back Linny Boss address? You'd be wasting my time if you just left like that. Linny Boss was still waiting for me to use my potions. Man! Gooden stood up and patted his butt, leaving helplessly. He needed to find a place to eat. He hadn't eaten for 2 days and he was starving. Luckily, Gooden's body was rather sturdy. If it were someone else, they'd be starving to death already. He didn't get far before smelling the smell of fried chicken. He raised his head and saw the big sign next to him, with the words Burger Fried Chicken written on it. Hamburgers were Western fast food, and he'd only seen it on TV before. He'd never tried it before, and Star West Village didn't have this type of food. He felt that it was fresh and plus he hadn't eaten for 2 days. Gooden walked quickly into the burger and chicken shop. There was only one waitress inside and no one else was in the shop. It was already late and it wasn't time to eat. It was normal to be empty. Shopkeeper, what good food do you have? Gooden was about to faint from hunger. He looked at the chicken in the fridge and started drooling. I want this and this and this, and a hamburger. All right, please wait a moment. Yuanyuan nodded, her eyes lifeless as she took out all the food Gooden wanted. Once upon a time she felt that her job was boring. But now Yuanyuan was reluctant to leave. She estimated that she would not be able to do this job for more than 2 days. Once she became Fighter Li's woman, she would not be able to show her face in public anymore. Therefore Yuanyuan cherished this rare working time. She probably wouldn't have such an opportunity in the future. Sir, 56 yuan in total. Yuanyuan passed the tray to Gooden. Okay. Gooden was secretly surprised. The food in this city was really expensive. 1 meal was enough to feed his family for a few days. Gooden thought as he took out money from his clothes, but when he touched his empty pockets, he suddenly remembered that his money was tricked by that liar girl. Gooden's face turned a little awkward. He didn't have any money coming here to eat? Wouldn't that be a free meal? What's wrong? Yuanyuan saw the change in Gooden's face as well. I don't have money anymore. Gooden stuttered, embarrassed. My money was scammed, cheated? Yuanyuan paused and looked at Gooden suspiciously, but judging from his clothes, he didn't seem like the type to cheat people out of eating and dashing. Fast food restaurants paid first, too, and dashing wasn't an option. At the train station there was a girl who said she had a child with appendicitis, and she asked me to borrow money, so I gave her the 1,900 or so I had. And she said she'd pay me back, but I waited on the bench for 2 days and she didn't come back. Gooden couldn't help but get a little angry, man. I didn't eat for 2 days just to wait for her. And she just left. Yuanyuan paused after hearing Gooden's story. This guy was a little too honest, wasn't he? He borrowed money from a stranger at the train station? Did he just believe whatever they said? Appendicitis? He was clearly a liar. But Yuanyuan could tell from Gooden's clothes that he'd just come from the mountains. These people were all honest people, and it was normal for him to be scammed. Hearing that Gooden hadn't eaten for 2 days, Yuanyuan felt sorry for him. Then this is my treat. Hurry up and eat, don't starve. They were about to go to Fighter Li's place, and Yuanyuan knew that money was useless. Fighter Li didn't lack money, so she didn't mind doing something nice. Gooden was like his father Yuran, they were both scammed, and Yuanyuan felt that she should help him out. I can't accept that. Gooden scratched his scalp. He didn't expect Yuanyuan to be treating him for free. The girl in front of him wasn't as pretty as that scammer, but in his eyes she was still a beauty amongst beauties. She was much prettier than those village girls from West Star Village. Plus, Yu Xiaoka's image in Gooden's mind was extremely bad, while this Yuanyuan in front of him was extremely kind. They were both beauties who lived in the same city, so why was there such a huge difference between them? It's nothing, you're very kind, you just got scammed. Hurry up and eat, it'll get cold, Yuanyuan said. Then I won't hold back. When I find that scammer girl and get the money, I'll pay you back. Gooden looked at the fried chicken and hamburger, his saliva almost dripping out. With that, Gooden happily took the tray and found a place to eat. Chapter 11:13. Why were you crying? Yuanyuan felt like crying all of a sudden. If it weren't for Fighter Lee and Scorpion, she would have died a long time ago. But now she couldn't die even if she wanted to. Even her life wasn't her own anymore. At that thought, Yuanyuan couldn't help but start sobbing. Gooden was having a great time eating when he heard a woman crying. He jumped up and looked up to see Yuanyuan crying. Shopgirl, what's wrong? Gooden quickly walked over. Yuanyuan didn't say anything, only crying. Gooden's question touched her heart, and she cried even harder. Hey, girl, why don't you say something? What's wrong? Why are you crying all of a sudden? Gooden panicked when he saw that Yuanyuan wasn't talking. Are you worried that I didn't pay for my meal? Don't worry, I'll pay you back for sure. Stop crying, you're making me uncomfortable. Yuanyuan started crying even harder at Gooden's nonsense. Yuren was worried about his daughter, and thinking that he wouldn't have many chances to see her again, he decided to lock up his shop early and go to the burger shop. Yuren heard his daughter crying as soon as he stepped into the burger shop. He panicked and ran over. Yuanyuan, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Did something happen? Dad. When Yuanyuan saw her father, she threw herself into his arms and cried even harder. Yuanyuan, don't cry, what's wrong? Yuren asked carefully as he hugged his daughter. Man, I just didn't bring money for my meal. You said you're treating me, why are you crying again? If you regret it, I won't eat anymore. Gooden really didn't know what to do. Yuren paused. So this guy was here to eat and dash? But it didn't sound like it. It seemed like his daughter was treating him? Go eat your food, it has nothing to do with you. Yuanyuan quickly explained, afraid that her father would blame Gooden. Hey, it has nothing to do with me. Then why are you suddenly crying? She was fine just now, why'd she start crying all of a sudden? Gooden sighed, not understanding what was going on. Kid, since it's none of your business, go eat. Yuren could guess why his daughter was crying, and he knew that it had nothing to do with Gooden. He waved his hand and told him to go eat. I ate your food, but I didn't eat it for free. Did you run into some trouble? Tell me, I'll see if I can help you. Gooden looked at Yuanyuan and guessed that she was in trouble. You can't help me. No one can help me. Yuanyuan seemed to be talking to Gooden, but also to herself. Don't ask. Why can't I help? Gooden felt a surge of pride in his heart as he looked at Yuanyuan crying. Gooden was the type of person who would repay the kindness of others with a single drop of water. Yuanyuan had treated him to a meal, and now that Yuanyuan was clearly in trouble, he couldn't just stand by and watch. I got kidnapped to be a concubine, can you help me? Yuanyuan didn't know what to do anymore, so she just said it out loud. This wasn't something to be proud of. She didn't want to say it, but Gooden kept asking, so she had no choice. Concubine. Gooden blinked. You got kidnapped to be a concubine? Who wants to kidnap you? Why would they want to kidnap you? Don't ask so many questions, it has nothing to do with you. Just leave after eating. Yuanyuan saw that Gooden was an honest person, and she didn't want him to get involved in this. Tell me what's going on. I don't believe that someone would kidnap you just because I'm sitting here. Gooden's temper flared up as he glared at her. Gooden had a good impression of Yuanyuan, and he felt that she was a kind girl treating him to a meal. She was much better than that scammer girl. So now that Yuanyuan was in trouble, Gooden was a warm-hearted person. How could he just ignore it? It's fine, I'll tell you if you want to hear it. Yuanyuan saw that Gooden was determined to get to the bottom of it, so she didn't insist. She'd been holding it in for the past 2 days, and having an outsider to talk to would make her feel better. In fact, Yuanyuan didn't think that Gooden could do anything. He just entered the city, so how would he know how cruel the world was? And so Yuanyuan told him about how Scorpion tricked her father into going to the arena, how he borrowed money, and how he forced her to be Fighter Li's concubine. Gooden was furious after hearing what happened to Yuanyuan. Glaring at Yuran. Who the hell is that Lil Scorpion and Fighter Li? One's a street thug, one's a street fighter, and I thought they were powerful people, but they're just 2 pieces of trash, and you want your daughter to pay off the debt? What kind of father are you? Are you a man or not? So what if I am? That Scorpion is from the underworld, and that Fighter Li is very powerful as well, breaking a steel door with 1 punch. What do you expect me to do? 1 word from him and my family will be destroyed. Yuran smiled bitterly. So you just accept your fate? You want your daughter to be his concubine? Gooden was pissed. What kind of father was this? What else can I do? Yuran shook his head helplessly. Kid, you don't understand. You're too honest, you don't know how powerful those people are. How powerful? How powerful can a street ruffian and a martial artist who performs martial arts be? Gooden said in disdain, these people only bully the weak and fear the strong. If I were you, I'd fight them to the death. Fight? I'm no match for them. Hurry up and beat them to death. Yuran felt that Gooden was getting more and more unreasonable. He shook his head. Why are you talking about my dad like that? You just entered the city, how would you know how powerful they are? It's easy for you to say, but why don't you fight them to the death? Yuanyuan was getting pissed. Her father wasn't a good person, but being scolded by an outsider like Gooden made her feel uncomfortable. Gooden had a point, but he didn't know how complicated things were, and how powerful those people were. Chapter 11:14. Gooden punches Fighter Li. Top here. Yuanyuan got even angrier after hearing Gooden's words. You killed him with 1 punch? Aren't you afraid of losing your tongue? Yuanyuan had a good impression of Gooden before. He was a simple and honest guy, and although he got tricked, at least he was a warm-hearted person. But even if you were warm-hearted, you shouldn't butt in when you couldn't do anything about it. Saying random things was just causing trouble. And so, in a fit of anger, she gave Fighter Li's name card to Gooden. On it was the address of the arena. Fighter Li had left this sign yesterday, and he came here because he was afraid that Yuanyuan would run away. He wanted to see what she was doing, reminding her not to forget the promise. Gooden took the name card and didn't say anything. He stuffed the chicken drumstick into his mouth and left the burger shop. Hey, where are you going? Yuanyuan jumped. Looking at Gooden, it seemed like he really was going to fight Fighter Li to the death. She panicked a little. She was just saying it out of anger, but she didn't think that Gooden would actually do something like that. If it were someone else, Yuanyuan wouldn't think much about it. After all, a lot of people were just pretending to run away. Who knew what they were going to do? But Gooden was different. She could tell from the fact that he was kind enough to pay the medical fees that he was a warm-hearted person. Yuanyuan was really worried that he'd go fight Fighter Li to the death. Yuanyuan felt that she was already unlucky enough. If she dragged Gooden into this for no reason, then her conscience would be hurt. This wasn't something she wanted to see. So Yuanyuan subconsciously ran out the door, wanting to call out to Gooden, but he was nowhere to be seen. Man, why's this guy so warm-hearted? Yuanyuan stomped her foot, panicking. But there was nothing she could do. Yuanyuan, let's hurry up and go over to take a look. Although this young man is a little silly, he is a warm-hearted person. Don't put him in danger because of this. Yuran was a coward, but he was a reasonable person. He didn't want anything to happen to Gooden because of his family. This matter had nothing to do with him, so why should he cause trouble for him? Yuanyuan was also anxious. After listening to her father's words, she didn't care about the business of the burger shop anymore. She hurriedly locked up the shop, stopped a taxi with her father, and rushed to the underground boxing field. But Yuanyuan was a beat too slow when she locked the shop, and how could a taxi be faster than Gooden? There was a speed limit for cars in the city, but there wasn't a speed limit for people. Gooden could even catch up to wild beasts on the mountain, so he was destined to reach the arena first. The address on the card was very detailed, and Gooden found a random person and asked for the direction of the address before flying to the arena. The underground boxing arena was transformed from an abandoned factory, but at the moment it was brightly lit. At the entrance of the abandoned factory, there were two burly men guarding. They were holding walkie-talkies in their hands. Obviously, they were in charge of guarding. Gooden walked over but was stopped by two people. "Who are you? What are you here for?" One of the guards looked at Gooden. The fight had already started, and Gooden coming to the arena at this time naturally raised the suspicions of the two men. "Move! I'm looking for someone." Gooden didn't care about these two men at all. These two men might look huge, but that was only enough to scare normal people. In Gooden's eyes, wild boars and bears were nothing to him. "How dare you? I think you're here to cause trouble, aren't you? But open your eyes and look at where you are. You must be tired of living to dare cause trouble here." The man heard Gooden's words and chuckled, looking at Gooden like he was an idiot. But Gooden didn't care about people like this. His goal was clear, and that was to kill that fighter Lee. Gooden casually pulled on the man, and he flew out with a cry, landing on the ground. Gooden didn't wait for him to say anything and went straight into the arena. The arena was brightly lit, and there was a lot of noise. On the arena, two people were fighting and the crowd was cheering. But this didn't matter to Gooden. He was here to find Fighter Lee. But in such a huge arena, where could he find Fighter Lee? Gooden didn't have any ideas, and after some thought, he jumped onto the arena. On the side of the arena, there were some staff and judges, but Gooden's movements were too fast. Before they could react, he was already on the arena. The audience, who were cheering for the fighters who were betting on each other, suddenly saw that there was another person in the ring. They were immediately stunned, and then let out cries of surprise. No one knew where this rustic young man came from. The two boxers who were fighting for their lives were also baffled by this scene. It was supposed to be their battle. Why was there another person? "Where's Fighter Lee? Come out and let me kill you with one punch." Gooden's goal was simple. If he killed Fighter Lee, naturally, he wouldn't let Yuanyuan be his concubine anymore. Why would a dead man need a concubine? Go find a ghost girl to be his concubine. The two boxers on the stage were a little dumbfounded. Who was this person? Was he a mental patient? The two looked at each other and gave up fighting for now, walking towards Gooden. If they wanted to continue, they had to throw this crazy person off the stage first. "Kid, you're here to cause trouble, aren't you? Do you know the consequences of interrupting us?" One of the fighters with a red hat yelled coldly. "You're Fighter Lee?" Gooden said as he looked at the red hat fighter. "Fighter Lee? What Fighter Lee?" The red hat fighter paused. "Since you're not Fighter Lee, then shut up. I'm here to kill Fighter Lee." Gooden waved his hand impatiently, gesturing for the red hat fighter to move aside. Chapter 11:15. Ere Gooden punches Fighter Lee below. Gooden clapped his hands and turned to the green hat fighter. "Are you Fighter Lee?" The green hat fighter couldn't help but frown. He wasn't sure where Gooden came from, but the kid was able to throw someone up in one hit. He must be pretty strong. So the green hat fighter didn't dare walk up. He only shook his head. "Kid, you looking for me?" Fighter Lee had already received a message from the two men at the door, saying that someone had forced their way into the arena. It seemed like they were here to cause trouble. As the boxing master of the arena, Fighter Lee naturally had to come out and see what was going on. And so, he just happened to see Gooden throw the red hat fighter away. "You're Fighter Lee?" Gooden raised his head and saw Fighter Lee on the second floor of the arena. "Kid, what are you doing here? If you're here to cause trouble, then you've come to the wrong place. Tell me what you want, and I'll let you live." Fighter Lee smiled coldly, his heart already filled with killing intent. This kid was saying he was going to beat him to death. Fighter Lee was a petty person, so how could he take it? "I'm here to beat you to death." Gooden frowned, impatient. "What are you doing up there? Hurry up and come down, I'll beat you to death." "Ha!" Fighter Lee laughed instead of getting angry. Was this Gooden an idiot? How could he say such retarded words? Telling him to come down and let him beat him to death? What a lame joke. But Fighter Lee still asked, "I don't even know you and you want to beat me to death?" The audience started laughing as well. Fights were fun, But accidents like this were quite interesting as well, especially when Gooden said he was going to beat Fighter Lee to death. Are you that Fighter Lee who wants to steal you Yuan Yuan? Gooden frowned, but he still wanted to confirm it. It wouldn't be good if he hit the wrong person. Oh, are you here to stand up for you Yuan Yuan? Very well, how dare you act cocky in front of me, Iron Fist Lee. You won't be leaving today. Fighter Lee's eyes flashed with rage. This Air Gooden wasn't Yuan Yuan's lover, was he? Otherwise, what did this have to do with him? With that thought, killing intent rose in Fighter Lee's heart. He was prepared to make Gooden stay. You're right, I'm here to stand up for you Yuan Yuan. Your grandpa dog egg, I punched a road roller and kicked an atomic bomb. It's fine if I call myself Iron Fist dog egg. But you, a filthy shit-like person, still call yourself Iron Fist Lee. Pooh. Gooden spat out some phlegm in disdain. And the phlegm flew all the way to the second floor, landing on Fighter Lee's head. Why yeah, I'll kill you. Fighter Lee wiped his forehead and jumped down from the stands, landing firmly on the stage. As a mystic mid-phase physical practitioner, this was a piece of cake. But, as soon as he landed on the stage, a hand came at Gooden. He was already furious and wanted to kill Gooden with his fist. Gooden didn't dodge at all, raising his fist to meet Fighter Lee's fist head-on. Gotcha! Bang! A crisp sound, a muffled sound. Fighter Lee's body flew out of the ring. One of his arms was bent at an abnormal angle. Obviously, the gotcha sound was the sound of his arm breaking off. In the air there was a streak of blood. It was spat out by Fighter Lee. He spat out blood as he flew through the air. With a pong sound, he landed heavily on the ground. Red and white blood flowed all over the ground. Then there was no more movement. Obviously, he would not survive. Ah! There was an exclamation of surprise from the audience. In this underground arena it wasn't rare to kill someone, but to send someone flying and spit out blood was unheard of. This was something that could only be seen in movies. And so the audience cheered again. Of course they didn't know who Fighter Lee was, and they didn't know that he was the one who killed the Red Dragon. They thought that he was just a low-level fighter. Gooden saw that Fighter Lee was dead, and he didn't stay any longer. It was common for people to die in this arena, but he was afraid that the people here would call the cops. Before they could react, he jumped off the stage and ran out of the arena like a puff of smoke, leaving the place. But just as they stepped out of the arena, a taxi stopped not too far away. The people who got out of the taxi were Yuan and Yuan Yuan, father and daughter. The two got off the car and saw Gooden running out. They quickly went up to him, but Yuan Yuan spoke first. How are you? Did you see Fighter Lee? Run, I killed him already. Gooden said in a low voice. Ah, you killed him? Yuan Yuan's eyes were wide as she looked at Gooden in disbelief. Yes. Gooden nodded. Taxi. Yuan Yuan suddenly remembered that the taxi was already paid, and they didn't have to wait. She turned around, and the taxi was already far away. Gooden scratched his head and reached out with both hands, picking up Yuan Yuan and Yuan as he ran. Yuan Yuan jumped in fright. She didn't think that Gooden could run this fast with two people in his arms. Was he even human? Yuan was dumbfounded as well. He didn't think that a human could run this fast. Gooden ran for more than a kilometer before stopping. Yuan Yuan and Yuan's weight was nothing to him. He was carrying a few 100 kilograms of wild boar on his back, but he was still able to run like he was flying. How did you run so fast? Are you even human? Yuan Yuan was put on the ground, scared out of her wits. She clutched her chest and pointed at Gooden, her face full of shock. I'm used to running in the mountains, Gooden said. All right, I killed that bastard. And he won't bother you anymore. You really killed him? Aren't you afraid of getting sued? Yuan Yuan didn't think that Gooden would really kill him. She didn't really believe it at first, but after seeing Gooden's speed, she started to believe it. This guy wasn't simple. Didn't you say that people dying in the arena was a common thing? They can call the police? Gooden jumped. Will the police come to arrest me? Chapter 11:16. Yuan's thoughts. With that thought, Yuan Yuan said, Fighter Lee gave me some money. Come to my house later and run with it. The police might not be looking for you, but I'm afraid the people in the arena won't let you go. You think I'm scared of those filthy bastards? If they dare come, I'll beat them up. Gooden didn't really care about the people in the arena, plus what would you guys do if I left? If they came for you, wouldn't I be doing something bad? Yuanyuan didn't really care about the arena's revenge. It was just death. What could be worse than death? But who would want to die if they could? Seeing how Gooden didn't seem to care, Yuanyuan wanted him to stay, but she didn't want to cause trouble for him. Hey, what's with this and that? I don't have a place to stay anyways, so I'll just stay at your house for a few days. Gooden was telling the truth. He had no money, and he even lost Boss Lin Yi's address. Where would he go? Kid, did you really kill Fighter Lee? Yuren pondered for a long time before finally asking. That Fighter Lee was a piece of shit. I killed him with one punch. Gooden nodded. Then what do you want to do in the future? What do you want to do in Songshan? Yuren felt that Gooden wasn't a bad person, and his mind started working. If he could make Gooden work in his shop, that would be a good thing. His body was strong and he'd be a good worker. Yuren's metal shop also sold building materials, but because Yuren couldn't deliver things to people's doorsteps, business wasn't that good. Now that Gooden was so strong, he'd probably be able to carry a toilet bowl or something, and so Yuren wanted him to stay. Especially with Gooden here, he'd be able to protect his house from the arena's harassment, so why not? Uncle, to tell you the truth, I came here to find my boss, but he put the address and the money in the handkerchief, and I can't contact him now. I don't know what I should do, Gooden said dejectedly as he thought about the stupid thing he'd done. Boss Lin Yi was still waiting for the potion, but in the end, he lost the address as soon as he arrived in Songshan. Oh, how about this? Why don't you stay at my shop and stay at my house for a while? You can look for your boss after you've settled down? Yuren said after some thought. Alright, uncle, don't worry, I won't freeload. I have strength, I can work. Gooden nodded happily. Alright, it's settled then. What's your name? What's your boss's name? Yuren nodded satisfied. This was great. He even saved his wages. I'm Zhou Jiaming, my boss is Lin Yi, Gooden said. I don't know him. Yuren shook his head. Songshan was huge, and it wasn't the same as a village. A lot of people didn't interact with each other for a lifetime. Then you can come to my house and settle down first? That's great. Gooden nodded. Yuanyuan didn't object. In fact, when her father suggested letting Gooden stay, she was a little happy. She didn't really like Gooden, but since ancient times, beauties loved heroes, and Gooden was kind, honest, and had a sense of justice. He was the perfect prince in Yuanyuan's heart, so she didn't reject him. And so, Gooden officially moved into Yuanyuan's house. Yuanyuan's mother had been frowning these 2 days. She knew what happened to Yuran and Yuanyuan. She hated Yuran for going to the arena, but there was nothing she could do now. She could only accept her fate. House Yu's security door had been repaired, and they bought the cheapest door they could, which was replaced after the new house was renovated. Even so, it still cost 300 kwai, making Yuanyuan's mother's heart ache. Yuren's mother knew that Yuanyuan didn't have much time left at home. Fighter Lee would be taking her away soon, so she quit her job as a nanny and prepared to stay with Yuanyuan for a few more days. She made dinner and waited for Yuanyuan and Yuren to come home. However, no matter how long she waited, they didn't come back. It was already an hour later than the usual time to get off work. Mrs. Yu couldn't help but call Yuanyuan. Mom, what's up? Yuanyuan's voice was a lot more relaxed, a change from the gloominess these days. Although this matter might not end with Fighter Lee's death, it was most likely resolved. Yuanyuan was very happy. This feeling of freedom was great. Yuanyuan, where are you? Why aren't you home yet? Hearing her daughter's voice, Mrs. Yu let out a breath of relief. She thought that Yuanyuan was taken away by Fighter Lee today, but it didn't seem to be the case. Mom, Dad and I are going home. There's a guest today. I'll tell you some good news when we get home. Yuanyuan looked at Gooden and said, Oh, good news? Mrs. Yu paused. Looking at the situation in House Yu, there wasn't much good news. Could it be that Fighter Lee's situation had turned for the better? Thinking about that, Mrs. Yu quickly asked, Yuanyuan, did Fighter Lee's situation turn for the better? We're on the bus now. It's not convenient to talk about it in public. I'll tell you when we get home. Yuanyuan wasn't stupid, although it wasn't a big deal for someone to die in the arena. She couldn't just talk about it outside, in case it caused trouble for Gooden. The arena, on the other hand, was in a mess. Scorpion didn't think that the arrogant fighter Lee would be killed by a young man called Grandpa Gooden. This was too weird, wasn't it? Scorpion quickly told the workers to take Fighter Lee's body away, letting the two fighters continue the fight, in case it affected the audience's bets. After arranging everything, Scorpion quickly ran to the arena's office. Jiang Wen, too, knew what happened outside the arena from the surveillance cameras. Fighter Lee's death was out of his expectations. He didn't think that Fighter Lee would be killed with one punch. Wasn't he a mystic mid-phase peak physical practitioner? How did he die just like that? Master 1, it's bad, Fighter Lee was killed. Scorpion stumbled into Jiang Wen's office and reported. Chapter 11:17. He had it coming. Jiang Wen was a smart man. He saw Gooden beat up someone and leave the arena. But he didn't send anyone to stop him. He knew that if Fighter Lee, a mystic mid-phase peak physical practitioner, couldn't handle him, who else in the arena could? Trying to stop him was clearly courting death. Master 1, what do we do now? Scorpion was panicking. Fighter Lee's dead. There's no one left. It's not a big deal, but how do we explain this to the Firewolves? As long as the Firewolves don't object, they'll send us a new practitioner soon. Jiang Wen wasn't sad about Fighter Lee's death at all. It didn't matter if he died. They didn't have a good relationship. But Fighter Lee was a practitioner sent by the Firewolves. It wouldn't be easy to explain this to the higher-ups. Master 1, this is easy to explain. Little Scorpion thought about it and agreed. The Firewolf gang wanted to continue making money in the arena, so they would definitely send another master. The main problem now was how to deal with Fighter Lee's death. But Little Scorpion had an idea for this. Oh, tell me, Jiang Wen said quickly. Young Master 1, let's just tell the truth to the higher-ups. It's all Fighter Lee's fault. He fell in love with a girl from a good family, but he didn't expect the girl's lover to be so powerful. He came to the door and killed him with one punch. Scorpion thought for a moment and said, Master 1, you still have to complain to the higher-ups about this. Say that Fighter Lee didn't listen to you, that he was arrogant and despotic, that's why he kidnapped a girl. If he listened to you and didn't cause trouble, he wouldn't have been beaten to death. Not bad, Scorpion, you have a brain. Jiang Wen nodded. Good. I'll make the call now. Hehe, you're flattering me, Master 1. Scorpion laughed. Isn't it all because you've taught him well? And you can leave first. Jiang Wen waved his hand, signaling Scorpion to leave first. His conversation with his father and the Firewolves couldn't be heard by anyone, not even Scorpion. After Scorpion left, Jiang Wen quickly called his father, and Mingyue. Hello? Jiang Wen, why are you calling me at this hour? And Mingyue was having dinner with the vice leader of the Northern Division when Jiang Wen's call came in. Dad, Fighter Lee was killed. Jiang Wen said. What? Fighter Lee was killed? What's going on? How did this happen? And Mingyue was stunned and frowned. Today, the vice leader of the northern branch of the Firewolves was treating him to a meal on behalf of the leader. The meaning of this meal was actually to acknowledge Jiang Wen's recent achievements. The underground arena had only been established for such a short period of time, and they'd already earned a few billion. It was a gold mine. Jiang Wen's speed of earning money was the fastest in the history of the Firewolves, and the leader of the Northern Division planned to reward and promote Jiang Wen. And Mingyue was very happy, but he didn't expect something to happen at this critical moment. On the other side, the deputy leader of the Firewolf gang's Northern Division heard in Mingyue's words, and his expression immediately changed. He asked with a gloomy face, Mingyue, what's going on? How did Fighter Lee die? I haven't asked clearly yet. Let me ask him first. And Mingyue's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. The Firewolves were strong, but a mystic mid-phase peak physical practitioner wasn't someone to be underestimated. They couldn't just let him die like that, and so Mingyue decided to find out the cause of the incident first and see if there was anything he could do. Give me the phone. I'll talk to Jiang Wen myself and ask him what happened. The vice leader waved his hand and took the phone from Mingyue's hand. One had to know that a mystic mid-phase peak physical practitioner was very important to the Northern Division of the Firewolves gang. They couldn't just let him die like that. There was no explanation. All right. and Mingyue didn't have a choice. He had to listen to the vice leader. He was worried that Jiang Wen would be punished, but he couldn't go against the vice leader's wishes. He regretted coming here today. He should have told his son beforehand, and maybe there would have been a way out. Hello? Jiang Wen? What's going on? Fighter Li is a master of our northern division. How did he get killed when he came to your place? How did such a big incident happen? The vice leader started to question Jiang Wen. Hello, is this the vice leader? Jiang Wen was a little tenser. This was his first time talking directly to a high-level member of the Firewolves, but he maintained his composure and asked respectfully, "It's me, tell me how Fighter Li died in detail." The vice leader said, "Vice leader, I finally found a boss that I can talk to." Jiang Wen acted as if he was full of grievances. Vice leader, that Fighter Li didn't listen to my commands at all, acting like a tyrant and causing trouble. Look at him now, isn't he? He was beaten to death by someone. You have to help me, it's affecting the arena's business. Oh. The vice leader paused from Jiang Wen's tone. It sounded like Fighter Li was beaten to death, and he felt wronged? At first, the vice leader thought that Jiang Wen would just admit his wrongdoing. He didn't expect him to complain. He frowned and said unhappily, "Jiang Wen, why are you so happy that Fighter Li was beaten to death? Don't you know that you are responsible for what happened to a Firewolves master in your place?" "I am responsible? No way," Jiang Wen said, unsatisfied. "Vice leader, he was looking for death. What does that have to do with me? He went out to flirt with a decent woman, and in the end, her lover came to find him and punched him to death. How could I stop this?" Fortunately, her lover was reasonable and knew that every wrong has a perpetrator, and every debt has a debtor, so he didn't tear down my boxing field. Otherwise, I would have suffered a great loss. Chapter 11:18. Chapter 11:16. Valentine's Day Special. Note: Valentine's Day Special can be considered a theatrical version, not a reference to the main plot. Today was the 14th of February, the traditional Valentine's Day in the West. Heavy snowflakes were falling from the sky, blanketing everything in white. Most of the cities in the world were in the midst of a lively and peaceful atmosphere. Couples walked through the shops on the pedestrian streets, enjoying each other's company. But there was one place that was an exception. This was the border of a small European country, where the temperature was as low as -38 degrees Celsius. There was no hustle and bustle here. The quiet border was covered in snow, and the air was filled with danger. Linny dug out a few mud balls from the fire in front of him and tossed them to the girl beside him. Eat! The mud ball that he had just taken out was still emitting hot air, but it soon cooled down. The girl's dexterous hands pushed the mud ball away. Inside was a roasted sparrow. The outer shell of mud had already stuck all the bird's feathers off, emitting a kind of primitive barbecued meat aroma. It was very mouth-watering. The girl brought the bird meat to his mouth and said happily, "Open your mouth, ah." "I'm not hungry." Linny frowned and rejected the girl's good intentions. He stood up and said, "Wait for me here. I'll find some more branches. This fire isn't enough to last through the night." "Don't go, I'm scared." The girl saw Linny was about to leave and quickly stopped him. Linny ignored the girl and walked out of the cave. "Eagle, wait for me. I'll help you too." The girl put down the bird meat and ran out of the cave with Linny. Linny's footsteps hesitated. He looked at the girl and didn't stop her. It was winter, and the ground was covered in snow. Even the branches were covered in snow, and it was hard to find them. But he didn't plan on picking them up either. He found a tree and jumped onto it, starting to break the branches off. The girl watched Linny from the side, but she couldn't help. She stomped her feet and felt sorry for herself. If it weren't for their stubbornness, the two of them wouldn't have left the team. Linny broke some branches. Seeing that it was almost done, he jumped down from the tree and found a soft vine to tie the branches on the ground. "I help you?" The girl looked at Linny busying himself and felt a little apologetic. "No need," Linny said expressionlessly. He quickly tied the branch and carried it on his back. The young girl felt that she was so useless. She wanted to help, but she couldn't help at all. "Eagle, I'm sorry. I really didn't know that what I did would cause trouble. For the past few days, Lin Yi had only been roasting the bird over the fire. He hadn't said a single word to the girl, which made the girl think that Lin Yi was angry. Oh. Lin Yi responded faintly and walked towards the cave. Hey, he already apologized to you, why are you still ignoring him? The girl was a little anxious. The girl's identity was a representative of a big family in the country. This time they were here to discuss a collaboration with a local tycoon. It was actually just a training for the young generation of the big family. Originally, this mission wasn't risky at all. Lin Yi was invited by Feng Tianlong to participate in this mission. This mission wasn't an official mission, but because of the powerful family behind the girl, Feng Tianlong naturally invited Lin Yi, an outsider, to be in charge of this mission. But who would have thought that after the discussion, when the group was about to enjoy the scenery at the border, something happened. At the border, they met a few poor children dressed in tattered clothes. They looked like refugees, so the girl asked the people accompanying her to give them some clothes and food. At that time Lin Yi was against it, but the girl said that he had no sympathy. Lin Yi wanted to say something but he didn't. He was just a bodyguard, and the others were all direct subordinates of the girl. The specifics were all decided by the girl. These people couldn't wait to flatter the girl, so why would they listen to an outsider like Lin Yi? So they opened their luggage and flipped through almost everything. They found some food and clothes, afraid that the girl wouldn't be satisfied. Lin Yi frowned but he didn't say anything. Don't show your wealth, that was the most basic rule. But these people who flattered her were all idiots. The children took the clothes and food and left happily. But not long after, an accident happened. A large number of armed forces rushed over. The children who received the girl's kindness weren't grateful. They called their parents and the armed forces began a large-scale plunder of the girl's group. Although there were masters in the group, in front of a large number of armed forces, they seemed insignificant. The ultimate goal of the armed forces was to detain the girl's group and rob them of their belongings. Under the attack of the armed forces, many of the people who couldn't resist surrendered, and the masters from the girl's family weren't a match for the guns and cannons. But as for the life and death of these people, Lin Yi didn't care at all. As for the things they brought, Lin Yi didn't have the obligation to protect them. To put it bluntly, Lin Yi was sent by Feng Tianlong just in case. When Lin Yi came, Feng Tianlong made it clear that he was only responsible for the girl's safety. So if something happened to the girl, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to explain himself. As for the others, if they wanted to die, they could die. Lin Yi had always been like this. But these armed forces were obviously only interested in the belongings the girl brought. They didn't want to kill them. After they knocked or injured the people, they didn't do any further harm. Seeing this situation, Lin Yi couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. But he still stood in front of the girl in case of an emergency. Can you please stop? We can give you all our belongings, but please don't hurt our people. Seeing this situation, the girl blamed herself and was a little nervous. She shouted loudly to stop them. Lin Yi frowned and wanted to stop the girl's actions, but the girl's words had already attracted the attention of the armed forces. Catch this girl. The armed forces saw the girl. Originally, they didn't notice the girl's existence during the plunder. She was the only female in the group, and in the armed forces where there were very few females, seeing a woman was like a hungry wolf seeing a real thing. The leader saw the girl's appearance and immediately had an idea. Chapter 11:19. Chapter 11:17. Valentine's Day special. To the subordinates of the leader of the armed forces surrounded the girl after receiving the order. The girl didn't think that not only did her words not solve the problem, but it also brought trouble to herself. She panicked. What are you doing? I've already given you all my belongings, why won't you let me go? The girl didn't think that these people would be so heartless. Girl, our leader has his eyes on you. If you know what's good for you, you better give up and come back with us. Otherwise, you'll get it. A muscular man with a submachine gun laughed coldly. Run! Lin Yi grabbed the girl's hand and started running without saying a word. With so many armed men, it was impossible for Lin Yi, who was only at the early phase of the golden class, to win. He could only take the girl and run. The girl was also at a loss from Lin Yi's actions. She stumbled from Lin Yi's pull, but Lin Yi didn't care so much. He grabbed the girl by the waist and ran in the opposite direction. Linny didn't care what happened to the people who followed him. As long as he sent the girl back safely, he would be able to answer to Feng Tianlong. Let go of the girl if you don't want to die. The muscular man with the submachine gun behind Lin Yi didn't think that Lin Yi would run away with the girl. He immediately became angry and warned. Why would Lin Yi care about him? Time was of the essence. The earlier he ran, the less danger he would be in. Run again and I'll shoot. The muscular man saw that Lin Yi was ignoring him, and was even more angry. He raised the submachine gun and aimed at Lin Yi. Lin Yi naturally wanted to run, but behind him came the sound of machine guns firing. Lin Yi didn't look back. He used the warning signal of the jade pendant to dodge the bullets coming from behind. The girl didn't think that the armed men would really shoot, especially with a submachine gun. Previously, they were only using guns as a deterrent. But now it was obvious that they were serious. Put me down, I don't want to drag you down. The girl naturally knew who Lin Yi was. She knew that he was only here to help her family protect her. Her life and death actually had nothing to do with him. Among the people who came along, everyone treated the girl like she was a god. Only Lin Yi didn't pay attention to her at all, and occasionally said a few words of opposition. Therefore, the young girl's initial impression of Lin Yi was very bad. She felt that this person was cold and didn't know how to give in to her at all. Was he even a man? But now her followers were either kneeling on the ground begging for mercy or being knocked unconscious. At the crucial moment, it was still Lin Yi who brought her to escape. The young girl's heart couldn't help but ripple. Won't I implicate you? Lin Yi didn't explain anything. Lin Yi was a man of his word. He would do what he promised others. He promised Feng Tianlong that he would protect the girl, so naturally he would keep his promise. Put me down, they have guns. The young girl was a little anxious. In her mind, under the situation of the submachine gun shooting from behind, the two of them wouldn't be able to survive. It was better to put her down and let her deal with the enemies. Lin Yi didn't have the time to reply to the young girl. He had to concentrate and use the strength of the warning signal from the jade to determine the direction of the bullets behind them. If he wasn't careful, he might get shot. This wasn't just 1 or 2 shots, it was a continuous barrage of bullets. The young girl saw that Lin Yi didn't move and immediately became anxious. She struggled on Lin Yi's body and prepared to get down. Don't move. Lin Yi frowned. The young girl's soft body and Lin Yi's arms emitted a faint fragrance. It already made Lin Yi's determination waver. After all, Lin Yi was at the age where he was full of vigor. With the young girl's movement, it made Lin Yi's breathing quicken and his heart flutter. Fortunately, Lin Yi's self-control was stronger. He didn't have any dirty thoughts towards the young girl. However, the young girl's movement was already making Lin Yi unable to bear it. Put me down, the young girl said without hesitation. Don't move if you don't want to die. Lin Yi said coldly. I won't move if you put me down, the young girl said. Bang, while Lin Yi was distracted, there was a muffled sound. Lin Yi's calf was shot. Although this degree of injury was nothing to Lin Yi, the pain still made Lin Yi frown. At this moment, Lin Yi's strength was only equivalent to the early phase of the golden class. Looking at the young girl who was still moving around in his arms, Lin Yi suddenly became angry. He reached out and hit her butt. Of course, Lin Yi only wanted to teach her a lesson. He didn't want to hurt the young girl. Otherwise, with Lin Yi's strength, the young girl would probably be beaten to death if he continued hitting her. The young girl screamed. She never thought that Lin Yi would dare to hit her. Moreover, it was her butt. The young girl felt wronged. She was the little princess of her family. When had she ever been treated like this? Moreover, her butt was being spanked by a man. The young girl was embarrassed and angry. She scolded Lin Yi, let go of me. If you don't, I will go back and sue you for being a pervert. Your mouth is on your body. Do what you want, Lin Yi said indifferently. Lin Yi didn't belong to Feng Tianlong's side. He wasn't under Feng Tianlong's control. Therefore, no matter how the young girl complained, Lin Yi didn't care. The young girl saw that she couldn't scare Lin Yi. She could only give up. She pouted and unhappily let Lin Yi carry her as he ran. Although Lin Yi's running speed wasn't as fast as a bullet, he was much faster than the big man chasing behind. In a short while, Linny had already left the big man far behind. However, Linny didn't slow down. Although the big man was chasing on foot, the armed men had cars. Linny was afraid that they would ask people to drive after him. On the snow, running could leave footprints. No matter how far Linny ran, they would be able to find him. After running for a while, Linny stopped. Can you put me down now? The young girl saw that Linny stopped, so she asked. Linny didn't answer. He still hugged the young girl tightly. He jumped up and flew onto a tree. Linny didn't plan to walk on the snow. He was prepared to jump between the trees. Only by doing this could he cover his tracks and avoid being tracked by the armed men. The reason why Linny chose to jump up the tree was because there was a cliff in front of him. In this way, Linny created the illusion of jumping off the cliff to mislead the armed men. The young girl didn't think that Linny would jump up the tree with her. She was shocked. What are you doing? Chapter 11:20. T003 Valentine's Day Special 3. After walking for quite a distance, Linny finally stopped on top of a very large tree. Linny estimated that the militants should have caught up by now, and he needed to stop and take care of the wound on his calf. Although this degree of wound wasn't a problem for Linny, the bullet hadn't been taken out yet. After jumping for such a long time, Linny's wound had become even more serious. Linny placed the girl in his arms on a tree trunk at the side. The branches of the tree were very strong, and the space on the tree was large enough to be safe. Even if the girl didn't know martial arts, she wouldn't have fallen. The girl didn't say anything. She didn't think that Linny would actually bring her out of danger. In her heart, she was secretly grateful to Linny. It seemed that he was really different from her subordinates. Previously, the girl thought that if she stayed and negotiated with the militants, she would have a chance of survival, but if she ran away, she would definitely be killed by those people. But now it seemed that her worries didn't come to pass. At the same time, the girl let out a sigh of relief and said seriously, "Thank you." Linny wasn't interested in the girl's gratitude. Although the girl was beautiful in his eyes, she was only an employer. No matter how beautiful the employer was, it was just a fleeting cloud. Linny wouldn't have any thoughts about her, and he wouldn't be happy because of her change of opinion towards him. Linny stood up and began to undo his belt and take off his pants. The girl was extremely grateful towards Linny, but when she raised her head, she saw him taking off his pants towards her. She was instantly shocked. What are you doing? The girl didn't think that just after she escaped danger, she would fall into danger again. Could it be that he saved her because he wanted to molest her? The girl's face became a little pale. Before, she had thought that he was a good person, but now Linny continued to take off his pants, ignoring the girl. If you continue like this, I'll jump down from the tree. The girl was a little anxious. She had just escaped from the wolves, and now she was in the tiger's mouth. How could she be so unlucky? I got shot in the leg, can't you see? I have to take care of the wound. Linny was annoyed by the questions, and finally pointed at his calf and explained. After listening to Linny's words, the girl couldn't help but be stunned. She then looked in the direction of Linny's finger, and saw that Linny's trousers were already soaked in blood. The girl was startled and said, "You were shot? Are you all right? If you didn't move, would I have been shot?" Linny rolled his eyes and said angrily, "Stop arguing. I want to take out the bullet." The girl felt guilty. It turned out that it was because of her previous struggle that Linny was shot. Thinking of this, the girl's eyes were filled with deep regret. "I'm sorry. Should I help you?" "No need," Linny said faintly. He took out a small knife from under his shoe and quickly dug out the bullet in his calf. Then he took out a small bottle of powder and sprinkled it. The girl's heart skipped a beat. Just as she was about to say something, the sound of a car came from not far away. "Don't make a sound." Linny waved his hand and said, "They are coming." The girl nodded and held her breath subconsciously, but fortunately the car just circled around and left. They didn't find anything wrong. They didn't even get close to the tree. They left. The girl looked at Linny carefully. Linny responded and put on his trousers. "Then let's go back?" asked the girl. "Go back where? Your people have probably been captured by them. If there are no accidents, They will use these people as hostages to negotiate with the local government and ask for a ransom. Linny said faintly, "You will be captured when you go back. Then will we always be on the tree?" The girl's face was a little strange. "We can't go down for the time being." Linny shook his head. "Not yet. Didn't they leave?" The girl asked with some doubts. "They will come back," said Linny. After listening to Linny's words, the girl was slightly stunned. She felt a little unbelievable, but she still nodded and didn't refute. In her opinion, Linny shouldn't harm her. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, the jeep that had left before drove back again. It wandered around for a long time before stopping under a nearby tree. The girl's eyes widened. Linny was right. These people actually came back. If it were me, I would have thought that the danger had disappeared and I would go down from the tree. Now I would have been discovered. Where did they go? Did they really jump off the cliff? The leader of the militants came down from the jeep. His face was a little sinister, and he looked around angrily. Then he said, Continue searching for me. I haven't seen such a beautiful girl for a long time." "Leader, I suspect that they have jumped off the cliff. There are no footprints nearby." The man with the submachine gun said carefully, "I told you to search." The leader of the militants said with some unwillingness, "If they are alive, I want to see them. If they are dead, I want to see their bodies. You must bring that girl back for me. After I'm done playing with her, I'll let you play with her." "Yes." When the man heard the leader's promise, he immediately became spirited and said, "I'll go around to the bottom of the cliff to take a look." The girl's face was very pale, full of shame and anger. She didn't expect these people to be so shameless. Fortunately, Linny was by her side. Otherwise, her innocence might have been ruined here. Linny was right. It was impossible to reason with these militants. In their eyes, there was no reason at all. The girl faintly sighed. Fortunately, she had Linny by her side. Otherwise, the people who followed her seemed to be loyal, but in fact they only knew how to flatter and would drop the ball at the critical moment. "We can go now." Linny looked at the jeep in the distance and let out a sigh of relief. The warning signal from the jade had disappeared. This meant that these people wouldn't be coming back in a short period of time. Oh, the girl had learned her lesson and nodded obediently. This time Linny still didn't choose to go down the tree. It seemed that this area was still within the armed forces' territory. Since their search could extend to here, there was no guarantee that they would come back again. So, in order to avoid trouble, Linny decided to continue to move forward on the tree. The wound on his leg had already started to heal. Jumping between the trees was not a difficult thing for a person with the strength of the early phase of the golden class. Chapter 11:21. T004 Valentine's Day Special 4-inch Eye. The girl blushed. She had never been so close to a man before. However, she knew that she was not a cultivator. Her bloodline was not suitable for cultivation, so it was impossible for her to jump from tree to tree. If she wanted to move forward, she still had to rely on Linny. However, it was indeed a little embarrassing to be carried by Linny. The girl was also afraid that it would be inconvenient for Linny to carry her, so she hesitated and said, "How about you carry me on your back?" "Ha. Okay." This was the first time Linny smiled after facing a formidable enemy. The girl was stunned. "You can still smile? I thought you didn't know how to smile. You were born with a cold face." The girl's relationship with Linny was not good before because Linny was the only follower who did not flatter her. Moreover, no matter what the girl suggested, Linny would object most of the time. From his point of view, the purpose of this trip to a small European country was to complete the business negotiations. Other than that, everything else was unnecessary. Therefore, the girl thought that Linny was a person who did not understand human emotions. He always put on a fierce poker face and did not know how to be flexible. But now, the girl finally understood that what Linny said before was for her own good. In this kind of foreign country, her follower had no experience at all. Obviously, Linny had a lot of experience. Just like before, if she had listened to him and not exposed her wealth, she would not have gotten herself into trouble. Linny did not answer the girl. Instead, he turned around and let her lean on his back. Although 16 years old was not very old, The girl's chest had developed well. When she leaned on Lin Yi's back, it was inevitable that her chest would press on Lin Yi's back. This made the girl very shy. But in this situation she could not care so much. Just as Lin Yi said, if those people found out, the girl's chastity would be lost even if she did not die. Therefore, the girl only hesitated for a moment before leaning on Lin Yi's back and hugging his neck. When Lin Yi stood up, he inevitably had to support the girl's buttocks. Otherwise, if the girl directly hung on his body, Lin Yi would suffocate. The girl's face suddenly turned red, but she was behind Lin Yi, so Lin Yi could not see it. Although the girl's buttocks felt good and he could feel the softness of the girl's chest on his back, Lin Yi could not think so much at this moment. It was more important to escape. Lin Yi crossed many trees again. After about half an hour, Lin Yi stopped and jumped down from the tree. At this moment Lin Yi had run very far away. There was a mountain range in front, and they should be out of the armed forces' territory. Lin Yi put the girl down. It's about time we should be out of the enemy's range. Do you have a phone on you? Contact the embassy and ask someone to send a plane to rescue us. Mine is in my backpack. I don't have it with me. Don't you have it with you? The girl was put down, but her face was still red. Just now, when she leaned on Lin Yi's shoulder, the strong masculine scent made her heart beat faster. Lin Yi frowned. He took out his phone and looked at it. He said faintly, "My phone has no signal here. Only your satellite phone can talk." Lin Yi brought a domestic phone, which could use the local communication network. However, they were now at the border. This should be a blind spot. Only the satellite phone could communicate with the outside world, but the girl did not bring it with her. Ah! The girl was shocked, and then an apologetic expression flashed on her face. I don't know. The satellite phone is too heavy. I thought everyone's phone could use it, so I put it in the suitcase. I'm sorry. Lin Yi shook his head. It was probably the girl's first time out. She was inexperienced, so he did not say anything more. After all, everyone's phone had a signal. The girl did not think that the satellite phone would be useful. Satellite phones were bigger and heavier than ordinary phones. It was not convenient for a girl to carry it around. My phone has a GPS function. I can only wait for my friend in China to locate us and find something wrong. Then he will come to rescue us. Lin Yi was not worried. He turned on the phone's GPS. This was basically a passive location. Lin Yi could not take the initiative to send the current information back. Thank you. At this moment, the girl sincerely expressed her gratitude to Lin Yi. No need. Lin Yi said faintly. There is a cave in front. Let's go take a rest. I will go find something to eat. Wait. What's your name? The girl suddenly gathered her courage and asked. Eagle, don't you know? Lin Yi said faintly. I mean my real name. The girl explained. 01, Lin Yi said. 01. What is this? The girl was stunned. Codename, Lin Yi said. If you don't want to tell, then I won't tell. The girl pouted. She was a little unhappy. My name is Yuning. Oh, Lin Yi replied before turning around to look for food. They must be prepared as soon as possible. It was not certain when the rescuers would come. If they were not well prepared, they were likely to die here. The cave was very shallow, and one could see what was going on outside just by sitting inside. The girl hugged her legs and curled up in the cave, quietly watching Lin Yi's silhouette walk away. Watching him disappear from her sight, the girl suddenly felt very lonely. She felt a little lost. It was the first time she was so intimate with a man in private, but he seemed to be very cold to her. Was he still holding a grudge? This was the whole story. Yuning followed Lin Yi. She wanted to help, but Lin Yi's movements were very fast. He had already returned to the cave with the branch. The girl could only follow behind Lin Yi. She was at a loss. The two returned to the cave and sat in front of the fire. Lin Yi closed his eyes to practice the art of dragon mastery. There were few people here, but the air was far better than other places. Lin Yi didn't want to waste this good opportunity to practice. Since he could fall here, it was a blessing and a curse. Yuning looked at Lin Yi, who closed his eyes to rest. She was a little bored but also a little curious. Although Yuning did not come into contact with many people, she did come into contact with some of the young men from the aristocratic families. Those men were either attentive to her or flattered her in every possible way, but none of them were like Lin Yi, who ignored her. Chapter 11:22. T005 Valentine's Day Special 5-inch Let's Talk? Yuning hesitated for a moment and finally asked, "What do you want to talk about?" Lin Yi opened his eyes. To be honest, Yuning was indeed a very attractive girl, especially for Lin Yi. In addition to Xiao Qi, she was the first woman that he was alone with. However, when he was with Xiao Qi, he was too young. Lin Yi's memory of this was somewhat vague and faded. However, Lin Yi was a very principled person. Yuning was his employer. Lin Yi would not let their relationship go beyond half a step. It was not in line with Lin Yi's style. "You must have experienced a lot of interesting things. Can you tell me about it?" Lin Yi's alertness and decisiveness made Yuning deeply curious. Yuning thought that he must be a person with a story. Although he looked about the same age as her, he must have had an unusual life. No. Lin Yi flatly refused Yuning's question. Yuning was a little annoyed. How could this person be so insensitive? Looking at Lin Yi closing his eyes again, Yuning stood up. She decided to go out and look at Lin Yi's poker face. It was too boring. "Don't go far." Lin Yi did not open his eyes, but said to Yuning, "Humph." Yuning snorted. It was an answer to Lin Yi's words and ran out of the cave. Lin Yi did not stop her. There was no danger nearby. The militants should not find them, so Lin Yi did not stop her. Yuning left and Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. For the first time he was alone with a beautiful girl. Lin Yi suppressed the puberty in his heart. He was unconsciously touched. Although Lin Yi knew Yuning's identity, Lin Yi's heart still inevitably beat faster. With a beauty by his side, it was impossible for a virgin like Lin Yi not to panic. Although he tried his best to calm himself down, it was not very effective. Lin Yi's state of mind was not as steady as it would be 2 years later. In the end, he was still a normal man. Lin Yi closed his eyes to practice. He didn't want to have too much contact with Yuning. In the wilderness, a man and a woman, this was the most likely situation for sparks to fly. Although Lin Yi was eager for something to happen, his reason stopped him. Moreover, Lin Yi was very clear that the other party was the person in charge of this negotiation, the little princess of a big family, and he was just an accompanying bodyguard. Was it realistic to have something happen with the princess? Yuning ran out of the cave, but she didn't go far. She didn't want to cause trouble for Lin Yi, so she piled up a snowman near the cave. House Yu was a mysterious house, and the reason why they were able to prosper and become the leader of the hidden houses was because of some unknown secrets. She was the inheritor of House Yu. She was the inheritor of House Yu's strength after the death of the old ancestor. This was also the reason why she couldn't practice. Her bloodline was born for inheritance. According to the instructions of House Yu's ancestor, Yuning must start her life's trial after the age of 16. Only by passing the trial could she receive the inheritance. During the trial, she couldn't add masters who were under the protection of the family, or else the trial would lose its meaning. Of course, these were the top secrets of House Yu. Yuning didn't know. She only knew that her bloodline wasn't suitable for practice. The reason why the family sent her out was to train her and make her a successful person. The children of House Yu didn't necessarily need to practice. The big House Yu also needed a leader. Yuning's grandfather had repeatedly revealed that he wanted Yuning to take care of the family business in the future. So Yuning thought that the trial now was just to better manage House Yu in the future. Of course, if she wasn't a practitioner, she couldn't be the head of House Yu. She was only responsible for taking care of the hidden House Yu's business. In fact, it was similar to a housekeeper, second only to the head of the house. What Yuning didn't know was that her family had high expectations of her. She was the hope of this generation of House Yu. If she could successfully receive the inheritance of House Yu's ancestor, then House Yu would rise and become an existence that surpassed the hidden houses and even the ancient sects. But this was only a legend. House Yu's people weren't sure if the inheritance would succeed. But the ancestor of House Yu wouldn't lie to them. No matter what, having hope was always good. House Yu wasn't an ancient sect, but the old ancestor of House Yu had discovered an ancient ruin when he was young, and in the ruins, he accidentally inherited the martial arts of that ancient sect. However, due to some flaws, it caused him to go mad, and his strength was greatly reduced. Even so, House Yu still became the leader of the hidden houses. But later, according to the research of the ancient ruin, he found out that the reason why he went mad was because he inherited the martial arts of two people. These two people were the martial arts of the two guardians of this ancient sect. These two people's martial arts complemented each other. But one was water and one was fire. They couldn't be passed on to the same person, otherwise, they would definitely suffer from Qigong deviation. The most important point was that these two guardians were female, and House Yu's ancestor was male. But when the ancestor of House Yu realized this, it was already too late. He hoped that after he passed away, according to the secret method mentioned in the ancient ruin, this martial art would be passed on to his unborn granddaughter. Yuning had a lot of fun playing in the snow. After making a snowman, she wrote the word 01 on the snowman. Then she drew the face of the snowman into a poker face. After all this, Yuning finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lin Yi was pulled back to reality by Yuning's laughter. He frowned. This laughter made Lin Yi a little upset. At this age, his resistance to girls was very poor. Lin Yi didn't want to think about Yuning, but in his mind, he couldn't help but think of Yuning's face. Opening his eyes, Lin Yi frowned and pretended to be unhappy. "What are you laughing at? Haha, come and see." Yuning pointed to her masterpiece and winked at Lin Yi. Lin Yi got up and walked out of the cave. When he saw Yuning's snowman, he couldn't help but smile. He didn't expect Yuning to make such a snowman, but it was quite a good image. "It's okay," Lin Yi said faintly. "Of course I am Genius Ning. This is Genius Ning's masterpiece." Yuning got Lin Yi's affirmation and was very happy. However, after Lin Yi finished this sentence, he turned back to the cave. In Lin Yi's heart, there was a kind of vigilance and rejection of Yuning. He warned himself not to get too close to her, otherwise if something happened, the old man would definitely not forgive him. Chapter 1123. T006 Valentine's Day Special Chapter 6 I'll kick you to death. Kick you to death. Who asked you to ignore me? Yuning obviously thought that the snowman was Lin Yi. How could a 16-year-old girl be so shrewd? All emotions were shown on her face. This was also the most impulsive age. The more indifferent Lin Yi was, the more Yuning was unwilling. Why? Even if you are here to assist House Yu in these negotiations, you don't have to act so high and mighty, right? After breaking the snowman, Yuning was a little distressed. She wasted half a day's effort, and now she broke it on impulse. It was a bit of a pity. House Yu was located in Yanjing where it rarely snows. Yuning rarely saw snow, so she had a lot of fun. Although the snowman was broken, Yuning didn't want to build it again. Instead, she went to play other games, leaving footprints in the snow. Although it was very cold outside, Yuning still had a lot of fun. Her little face was red from the cold, but it was the first time she played with such abandon, carefree. At home, if Yuning wasn't learning the four arts, she would be learning the management of her family. There was no time to play at all. Lin Yi didn't eat anything. He just stuffed the leftover bird meat into his mouth, but when he was practicing, he didn't need to eat too much. In the blink of an eye, it was evening and it was dark outside. In the distance, there were a few howls of wolves. Yuning was a little scared, so she ran back to the cave, but her whole body was frozen. "It's so cold." Yuning put her hand on the fire and warmed herself. Lin Yi opened his eyes, picked up a few branches and put them in the fire, making the fire a little bigger. Yuning looked at Lin Yi's cool poker face, and a trace of slyness appeared in the corner of her mouth. It seemed that he still cared about her. When she was warming herself, he helped her add firewood. He must be afraid that she was too cold. In fact, Lin Yi was not wrong to care about her. He just didn't want to express it. "This is the first time I spent the night alone." Yuning looked at the burning fire and felt that it was very novel and exciting. In her past 16 years of life, she never thought that she would spend the night in a cave. Lin Yi was stunned. He pointed at himself and shook his head with a bitter smile. "Alone? Am I not human? Little girls from large clans really have strange thoughts. Yuning saw Lin Yi's stunned expression. She also thought that there were some mistakes in her words. Embarrassed, she said, "I mean spending the night with a stranger." "No, not a stranger. It means spending the night with a boy." Looking at Yuning's incoherent look, Lin Yi faintly smiled. Yuning's pretty face reflected by the fire was more beautiful than during the day. This scene was indeed very romantic, and Yuning's words made people's imagination run wild. Lin Yi sighed slightly and tried to restrain his emotions. He said, "Nothing, are you hungry?" "I'm not hungry, I'm a little sleepy. I want to rest for a while." Yuning shook her head. At this time, not far from the cave, there was the sound of a wolf howling. During the day, the frontier fortress was very quiet, but at night, all kinds of beasts came out. I'm a little scared. You will be by my side to protect me, right?" Yuning subconsciously shrank her body in front of the fire. She was just a 16-year-old girl. How could she have experienced such a scene before? Indeed, spending the night in the cave in front of the fire was exciting and romantic. But if there were beasts nearby, then the romance would turn into fear. "There is a fire here, the wolves will not come in," Lin Yi said faintly. If the wolves were not hungry or for a reason, they would not easily get close to the fire. Lin Yi had the experience of surviving in the wild and naturally knew this. "Oh," Yuning nodded. At night, Lin Yi would not fall asleep. He was always in a state of cultivation, so if a beast really entered the cave, Lin Yi could respond immediately and kill the beast. Yuning sat in front of the fire and fell into a deep sleep. She was too tired. Before it was a thrilling escape and after that it was a crazy play. This required physical energy, so Yuning quickly fell asleep. She didn't know how long it took, but Yuning felt very uncomfortable. Her whole body was cold and she kept shivering. Did the fire go out? Yuning subconsciously opened her eyes. Yuning's slight movement had already made Lin Yi return to reality from his cultivation. Seeing that Yuning woke up, Lin Yi did not care and closed his eyes again. "So cold? I'm so cold." Yuning found that the fire was not extinguished, but her body was cold. Lin Yi opened his eyes again and looked at Yuning strangely. Lin Yi did not feel cold. On the contrary, with the fire burning, Lin Yi felt very warm. But because of this, Lin Yi felt that something was wrong. "What's wrong with you?" Lin Yi stood up and walked to Yuning's side. "I'm so cold." Yuning shivered with cold. Lin Yi looked at Yuning carefully and saw that her face had an unusual blush. He suddenly frowned and reached out to touch Yuning's forehead. Although Yuning was very cold and uncomfortable, she was awake. When Lin Yi's hand touched her forehead, Yuning's body suddenly trembled, and an unprecedented shyness and heartbeat spread throughout her body. "So hot." Lin Yi frowned. He did not expect Yuning to have a fever at this time. Thinking about it during the day, Yuning played in the snow for almost an afternoon. She should have caught a cold at that time. At that time, Lin Yi did not care, but looking back and thinking about it, Yuning was not a cultivator. It was freezing outside. Lin Yi was fine, but for an ordinary person, a cold was a normal thing. Lin Yi suddenly became a little anxious. In addition to the injury medicine, he did not bring any other medicine. All the commonly used medicines were placed in Yuning's luggage, and his own silver needles were also in the luggage. Even if Lin Yi was proficient in medical skills, there was nothing he could do. A cold and a fever could not be easily solved by massage. If there were silver needles in hand, he could achieve the goal of reducing the fever by needling a few acupuncture points. Cold? Yuning felt colder and colder. Her whole body was shivering, and her teeth were constantly chattering. Lin Yi hesitated, and there was some struggle in his heart. Chapter 1124. T007 Valentine's Day Special Chapter 7. The special chapter can be read as a secondary line of the book. There will be some hidden spoilers. Yuning moaned a little. It was the first time she was so intimately hugged by a man, but at this moment Yuning felt so warm, so safe. With a beauty in his arms, Lin Yi wasn't Lu Xiaohui. He still couldn't practice the peerless divine art of sitting still. The only thing Lin Yi could do was to try his best to restrain his desire. He always reminded himself that he was treating Yuning's illness. He didn't want to take advantage of her. But the night was long, a man and a woman alone in this situation. It was inevitable that something would happen. For the first time in 16 years, Yuning had a very peaceful feeling. Lin Yi's broad arms gave her infinite warmth. Yuning once again fell asleep. When she woke up again, Yuning felt that her body no longer had the cold feeling before. Instead, it was replaced by a very comfortable warmth. It was warm, it made her feel very comfortable. This kind of feeling made her a little reluctant, and she was also a little shy and embarrassed. After all, at this moment, she was lying in the arms of a strange man. This was something that Yuning couldn't imagine before, but now it happened and it made her reluctant. Was this the feeling of liking someone? Yuning was very confused. In the past 16 years, her emotional life was a blank. The purpose of contacting those young masters was only for the sake of social benefits. It was arranged by her family to pave the way for her to take over the power of House Yu. Lin Yi's perception was very keen. The beauty in his arms woke up. Lin Yi immediately felt it. He opened his eyes and whispered, "You woke up? How do you feel?" "I'm still so cold." Yuning lied. She didn't know why she lied, but she did lie. Yuning's face was very red, but fortunately it was night time. Under the reflection of the fire, her face was a little red, so she wasn't afraid of being seen by Lin Yi. Lin Yi reached out and touched Yuning's forehead. What he felt was a normal body temperature. He couldn't help but be stunned. Yuning's fever had already subsided. How could she still feel cold? Could it be that only the fever on his forehead had subsided, but not on his body? Thinking of this, Lin Yi subconsciously extended his hand to Yuning's armpit, but inevitably, he touched Yuning's chest. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi's hand was slightly sluggish, but it was as if he was deliberately touching it. Yuning snorted and her face became redder, but she didn't say anything to stop it, nor did she make a move to stop it. The electric shock made Yuning have an unprecedented feeling, and her breathing became rapid. Yuning let out a low moan, but even if it was so low that it could not be heard, in this quiet cave, Lin Yi could hear it clearly. Lin Yi's heartbeat could not help but speed up a lot. The temptation of this sound was unimaginable. For a moment, Lin Yi almost had a feeling of burning desire. Yuning's heart was nervous and looking forward to it. Could it be that the legendary thing was about to happen? Yuning was not a casual person, but at this moment she really had such an idea. There was no doubt that Lin Yi was a man who made her fall in love with him. This was the first man who walked into her heart. Before, Yuning's impression of Lin Yi was undoubtedly very bad. Lin Yi's coldness and indifference made Yuning very uncomfortable. From the beginning of joining the team, Lin Yi had always been indifferent to Yuning. But even more, when Yuning proposed some action plans, Lin Yi always sang a different tune to her. This made Yuning hate him in her heart. How could this man be so arrogant? Even if you were sent by a special department to assist your family in business negotiations, you can't have such a high and mighty attitude, right? Don't you know how to be tender to the fairer sex? Yuning viciously guessed that Lin Yi must be gay, and there was a problem with his sexual orientation. However, the facts later proved that Lin Yi was a great and extraordinary man. His judgment was always right, and when she was in danger, he was the first to protect her without any regard for his own safety. Even when he was shot because of her willfulness, he still did not have any complaints. At this moment, Yuning was moved. She didn't know if this was love, but sometimes love was so simple. Love and hate would change in an instant. The hate from before would turn into love. The moment Su Xian saved the white snake fell in love with Su Xian. So at this moment, Yuning also fell in love with Lin Yi. Perhaps at the age of 16, her feelings were not mature, but she dared to love and hate, regardless of the consequences. Yuning forgot about the family behind her, and forgot the expectations of the Yu family for her. Time only stopped at this moment. She hoped to always rely on the arms of Lin Yi, to make her feel happy and at ease. However, Lin Yi's hand at this time pulled away, which made Yuning's heart feel a little lost. She wanted Lin Yi to continue, but she was too reserved to say it. "Hug me. I'm cold." Yuning lied again. Yuning's words undoubtedly made Lin Yi's mind more impulsive and unclear. Lin Yi didn't care whether Yuning was cold or not. He reached out and hugged her tightly. The breathing of the two people became hot and heavy. Yuning slightly turned her head and closed her eyes. She was nervous and looking forward to it. This undoubtedly made Lin Yi even more excited. Looking at Yuning's slightly raised mouth, Lin Yi had an impulse to kiss her. The lips of the two people were slightly close, and they were about to touch. Suddenly, there were a few howls of wolves outside the cave. Lin Yi instantly restored his calmness. He raised his head and looked outside the cave. Under the dark night, there was a pair of flashing lights. It was the eyes of the wolves. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief and let go of Yuning's body. He almost made a mistake. If something really happened today, then Lin Yi's career would be over. Having a relationship with an employer was unforgivable. The old man at home would punish him. There are wolves coming, Lin Yi said faintly. Yuning also opened her eyes, and her beautiful eyes flashed a trace of disappointment. She was so proactive, but he didn't like her? Or was he really disturbed by the wolves? Dead wolves, broken wolves, two stupid wolves. I'll dig out your eyeballs and step on them. Yuning cursed to herself. She raised her head and looked outside the cave, but when she looked, she was shocked by the number of wolves. Why were there so many wolves? There were more than 20 of them. Chapter 11:25. T008 Valentine's Day Special Chapter 8. Lin Yi secretly found it funny. Although Yuning's voice was very small, it could not escape Lin Yi's ears. However, Lin Yi did not say anything. The previous situation was a bit ambiguous, and it gave Lin Yi some headaches. He almost couldn't control himself. Although he reined in the horse at the edge of the cliff, could he really act as if nothing had happened? Undoubtedly, the relationship between the two people was much more ambiguous than before. Let's wait and see, they should not come into the cave, Lin Yi said faintly. However, this was only a comfort for Yuning. Now that the situation outside was out, Lin Yi's heart did not have any confidence. These wolves were probably hungry. In this snow-covered wasteland, it was really a bit difficult for wolves to find food. And now that they found their target, they should not give up so easily. If it was one or two wild wolves, they would retreat, but the situation now should not be so easy. Oh, Yuning was still a little scared. She drilled into Lin Yi's arms and gathered her courage to say, "Can you hug me?" Lin Yi did not respond. He had already made a mistake before. He couldn't make a mistake again. Lin Yi did not reach out to hug Yuning, nor did he push her away from his arms. At this moment, Lin Yi's heart was very contradictory. Yuning saw that Lin Yi was indifferent. Her heart was a little resentful, but it also aroused her competitive mentality. She turned around and took the initiative to hug Lin Yi. She leaned her head on Lin Yi's chest and quietly listened to Lin Yi's heartbeat. At this moment, Yuning forgot the horror of the hungry wolves. In Lin Yi's arms, she felt safe. The wolves surrounded the entrance of the cave. At this time, it was a competition of patience. When the sky was bright, they would retreat, but they were waiting for the people in the cave to impatiently come out. Or was it to make sure that the fire in the cave was not dangerous? Finally, one of the wolves became impatient and tried to approach the cave. The fear brought by the fire had been overcome by hunger. If there was nothing to eat, it could only starve to death. Yuning saw this scene and couldn't help but exclaim, "Aren't they afraid to come in? Even a cornered dog will jump over a wall, let alone a hungry wolf." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He had underestimated the courage of the nearby wolves. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of the hungry wolves. Lin Yi could guarantee that he wouldn't be hurt if the wolves besieged him, but Lin Yi was afraid that these wolves would hurt Yuning while besieging him. It was impossible for him to kill so many wolves at once. It was unrealistic. "I'm scared." Yuning didn't lie this time. She was really scared. "Oh, it's okay." Lin Yi comforted her. But his eyes were fixed on the wolf that tried to walk into the cave. The wild wolf walked and stopped. It seemed to know that everything in front of it wasn't as calm as it seemed on the surface, but it was hungry after all. After a short test, it impatiently crawled over here. Yuning couldn't help but exclaim. She hugged Lin Yi's hand a little tighter. Lin Yi frowned. He didn't expect this wolf to be so bold, but in this case it was impossible to expect it to retreat. In an instant, Lin Yi had the intention to kill. He only hoped to kill one to warn others, otherwise the problem wouldn't be solved. Wait for me, we will have meat to eat tomorrow morning. Linny faintly removed Yuning's hand from his body and said. Yuning was obviously reluctant, but there was no other way. She couldn't wait for the wolf to come over, right? So Yuning obediently let go of Linny, but she said to him, you be careful. Linny didn't speak but suddenly ran to the wolf. He lifted his leg and kicked the wolf's head. The bold wolf didn't even have time to groan before it was kicked out by Lin Yi. It fell heavily on the stone wall of the cave and died. Lin Yi's action was ruthless, but it shocked the wolves outside. Those wolves who were originally moving forward all took 2 steps back. Yuning also exclaimed subconsciously. She didn't expect Lin Yi to be so powerful. He kicked the wolf to death with 1 kick, but it made her originally nervous heart relax a lot. After Lin Yi kicked the wolf to death, he didn't return to Yuning's side. Instead, he stood in the same place and looked coldly at the wolves outside the cave. The wolves were indeed a little scared. They knew that Lin Yi was a very dangerous prey. But they were hungry, so they didn't leave here. They still waited outside the cave, waiting for the opportunity to move. Perhaps in the eyes of these wolves, although Lin Yi was powerful, he was not the opponent of their group of wolves. If Lin Yi was really powerful, then he could kill them all. I'm a little scared, can you come back? Yuning subconsciously called out to Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't answer. At this time he couldn't leave. He had to keep an eye on the movements of the wolves. Yuning saw that Lin Yi didn't pay attention to her. She was a little unhappy and pouted, but Lin Yi obviously couldn't see it because Lin Yi didn't have eyes on the back of his head. After a while, 2 hungry wolves finally couldn't hold it in anymore, and walked over to Lin Yi's side to test the waters. 2 wolves, Lin Yi could still easily deal with them. What Lin Yi was looking forward to now was that if these wolves walked forward in small groups, then Lin Yi would be enough to deal with them. However, he was afraid that they wouldn't be like this, and if they swarmed him, then it would be a little troublesome. After the 2 wolves walked to the entrance of the cave, 1 wolf quickly rushed to Lin Yi, but the other did not rush to Lin Yi, but rushed to the body of the wolf that Lin Yi had just killed in the cave. Lin Yi's mouth flashed a sneer. This wolf was quite smart. It seemed that the sense of teamwork between the wolves was too poor, and each had their own ideas. Originally, 2 wolves were facing the enemy together, but one of them had a different idea and went to grab the body of the other wolf. Wolves were carnivores, and they also eat the corpses of their own kind. Therefore, the wolf felt that Lin Yi was more difficult to deal with, so it wanted to drag the body of its own kind. However, how could Lin Yi let it succeed? Lin Yi first took care of the hungry wolf that pounced at him with a single punch, and then with lightning speed, he took care of the wolf that went to drag the corpse of its own kind. Lin Yi sneered and piled the bodies of the 3 wolves together. He looked coldly at the wolves outside the cave. 2 more hungry wolves that tried to test the waters turned into corpses, which made the wolves outside a lot more cautious and careful. They once again retreated a distance, but they still had no intention of leaving. Chapter 11:26. T009 Valentine's Day Special Chapter 9. After a while, the wolves were a little impatient, but they did not choose to leave. Instead, they chose to act as a group. Among the wolves there was obviously a leader. After it shouted at the wolves all approached the cave together. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He did not expect that this group of wolves was actually an organized wolf pack. Before, when he saw the 2 wolves that were not harmonious, Lin Yi thought that these wolves were spontaneously walking together. Ayo! The leading wolf let out a mournful howl. You hide behind me! Lin Yi took a deep breath. He couldn't leave Xiao Ning behind. Not to mention that Xiao Ning was the person he wanted to protect. Even if she wasn't, based on the relationship between the 2, Lin Yi couldn't ignore her. And although Yuning was afraid when she heard Lin Yi's words, she still got up and hid behind Lin Yi. You will protect me, right? Lin Yi nodded. Yuning smiled slightly and hugged Lin Yi from behind and hugged Lin Yi. Such a bold move. If it was any other time she would definitely not dare to do it, but today she did it naturally. In this kind of environment it was completely possible to do things that she usually wouldn't dare to do. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yuning hugged him from behind so that he couldn't clean up the wolves that ran over, so that both of them would be trapped by the wolves. Thinking of this, Linny said to Yuning, "You let go of me." No. Yuning thought that Linny wanted to drive her away, so she stubbornly shook her head. Linny was stunned and somewhat helpless. He could only turn around and hug Yuning. He held her buttocks and let her sit in his arms. Linny held Yuning with one hand. For Linny, this was not a difficult thing. This level of weight was nothing at all. In this way, although it was still a bit of a burden, Linny could free up one hand and two legs, which was enough to deal with the attack of the wolves. Yuning was shocked by Lin Yi's sudden move, but her heart was very sweet. It turned out that he wanted her to let go because he wanted to hug her. Linny didn't have time to explain so much to her, because the wolves had already rushed in. "Close your eyes," Linny said to Yuning, and then he made his move. Dealing with these beasts was nothing for Lin Yi. When Lin Yi was young, he often went up the mountains to hunt. The two of them were wild boars and kicked wild wolves. These wolves were not enough to enter Lin Yi's eyes. The reason why Lin Yi asked Yuning to close her eyes was that Lin Yi didn't want to scare Yuning. He wanted to start a massacre, and it must be much more bloody than before. A burst of howling and screams of the wolves came one after another. A hungry wolf fell to the ground, the cave wall, and died. In the blink of an eye, most of the wolves were dead or injured. The leading wolf finally couldn't stand it anymore. It howled loudly and led the remaining wolves to quickly evacuate the cave. In the blink of an eye, they ran away. In their view, Lin Yi was already in existence like a natural enemy. They couldn't defeat him. Staying was just sending themselves to death. If they didn't run now, when would they? "Okay, you can open your eyes," Lin Yi said. "Is it over?" Yuning opened her eyes, but she saw the dead bodies of the wolves in the cave. She was suddenly shocked. "You killed them all?" "Some ran away." If Lin Yi wanted to kill them all, it wouldn't be difficult. It was just that he was holding Yuning, so it was somewhat inconvenient for him to move, so he let the wolves go. In fact, Lin Yi didn't have any hatred with these wolves. They came to him purely out of instinct. Lin Yi couldn't lower himself to a group of animals. Killing these wolves was enough for him and Yuning to eat for a few days. There was no need to kill all the wolves. "I knew that you would protect me regardless of your own safety." Yuning smiled sweetly and said happily, "If you die, I won't be able to explain." Lin Yi knew what Yuning meant, but Lin Yi couldn't let the situation develop. He could only say so. Yuning's expression was gloomy. She licked her lips, but in the end she didn't say anything. Lin Yi put Yuning on the ground. Although Yuning was unwilling to let go of Lin Yi's neck, Lin Yi was half squatting there. He didn't intend to continue to hold her. Yuning was not willing to be outdone. She was stiff on Lin Yi's body. Lin Yi's half-squatting posture was not easy for ordinary people to maintain. After a while, his legs would be sore, but it was nothing for Lin Yi. It was much easier than when he was a child. In the end, Yuning finally couldn't hold it anymore. She first compromised and came down from Lin Yi. She said with some complaints, "You are so cruel." Lin Yi didn't say anything. He turned around to deal with the bodies of the hungry wolves in the cave and piled them together. "I want to go to the toilet," Yuning suddenly said. "Oh, then I will go out." Lin Yi turned around and walked out of the cave. "No, I want to go outside." "This is a place to live," Yuning said. "Oh, then you go out." "I won't go out of the cave." Lin Yi turned and walked back into the cave. "But I am afraid. You accompany me." Yuning's current mentality was similar to other girls in their rebellious period. The more Lin Yi avoided her, the more unwilling she was. She couldn't care so much and became more bold. "It's okay. You can just dig out their eyeballs and step on them." Lin Yi couldn't help but tease her. "Ah." Yuning was stunned. She immediately thought of her own bold words. She didn't expect that she was talking to herself in such a small voice, but Lin Yi actually heard it. Yuning suddenly felt embarrassed, but then she thought, so what if he heard it? Anyway, she was bold enough. She wasn't afraid of what Lin Yi would think, so she said, "I mean, you kill them, then I will step on their eyeballs." Lin Yi was speechless for a while. Sometimes there was no reason to talk to a girl. "Then let's go, I won't look at you." Yuning frowned and didn't say anything. She hoped that Lin Yi would peek at her. Although it would be a little shy, at least it proved that Lin Yi was interested in her. Out of the cave, Yuning found a tree root, untied her pants and let out water. The sound of water made her blush. She looked at Lin Yi not far away, but found that he was looking in the opposite direction from her. This made Yuning a little lost. Did he really not feel anything for her? Chapter 11:27. T010 Valentine's Day Special Chapter 10. Lin Yi's heart was somewhat tangled. Although he had performed a lot of tasks, he was still a 16-year-old boy. If he said that he had no feelings for Yuning, he would be deceiving himself. But having feelings didn't mean that he could act according to his own ideas. Lin Yi took a deep breath and resisted the urge to look back. His eyes looked into the distance and quietly felt the movement nearby. The wolves had obviously gone far away. They didn't have the courage to stay. Yuning shyly pulled up her pants and washed her hands with the snow on the ground. Then she stood up and walked to Lin Yi's side. Are you done? Let's go back? Lin Yi felt Yuning coming over, so he asked. Well, but I don't want to go back. Can you accompany me to the entrance of the cave to look at the stars? Yuning said, the sky here is clearer and cleaner than in the city. You can see more stars. Okay. Lin Yi did not refuse. He felt that some things must be talked to Yuning openly. The relationship between the two people must be clear. Yuning and Lin Yi sat at the entrance of the cave. There was a fire burning behind them, but they didn't feel cold. Today is Valentine's Day, Yuning said. She was a little annoyed with Lin Yi's silence. If you don't talk to him, he is like a wooden man not saying a word. Is it? It seems that it has passed? Lin Yi asked. This is the happiest Valentine's Day I have ever had. Yuning ignored Lin Yi's words and continued, on my 16th Valentine's Day, I think I found someone I like. Lin Yi's heart was suddenly shocked. What Yuning's words meant, Lin Yi was very clear. Yuning actually wanted to confess to him in this environment. Although this seemed to be a good thing, Lin Yi didn't think so. He had to rein in the horse at the edge of the cliff and kill this unstarted relationship in the cradle. You're only 16 years old. You're too young to understand what love is. In this environment, we've experienced many things together. Perhaps you mistakenly think that this is love, but it's not. Lin Yi interrupted Yuning's words and said, when you return home, you will find that everything is so ridiculous. No, I know what I'm thinking. What's so young about 16? In ancient times, they even had children. Besides, you're only 16, right? Why are you lecturing me? Yuning asked with some excitement. She was somewhat dissatisfied with Lin Yi interrupting her confession. Really? Then you can continue. Lin Yi was helpless against Yuning's stubbornness. He was thinking about how to convince her. Eagle, I like you. Yuning finally said the words that she had been suppressing for a long time. After that, she breathed a sigh of relief as if she had completed a major event. What do you like about me? The reason why Lin Yi let Yuning continue was that he wanted to solve this matter from the root cause. You give me a sense of security. Before, because I got into trouble, in such a dangerous situation, you could have escaped alone, but you risked your life to protect me. You were injured because of my willfulness, but you didn't complain at all. Yuning said, at that moment I fell in love with you. Miss you, don't you think your idea is ridiculous? I'm a bodyguard, responsible for your safety. If it was someone else, they would do the same. My duty is to be responsible for my superiors. What does it have to do with me risking my life to save you? Lin Yi said coldly, in other words, if the object of my protection was not you, I would also do the same. That I don't care. Anyway, you are the first man to walk into my heart in 16 years. And you will definitely be the last. Yuning shook her head stubbornly. I just like you. When I go back, I will tell my mom and dad. Let them contact your superiors and ask you to come and protect me. Oh, that's good. Wait until you can come and talk. Lin Yi was full of confidence in this. If he was Feng Tianlong's subordinate, he would have some concerns, but he and Feng Tianlong were in an equal relationship. Lin Yi only assisted Feng Tianlong's department to do some things, but to say that he ordered him, that was impossible. Yuning also heard something, but she didn't give up. If that doesn't work, Then every time there is a task, I want you to accompany me. Well, whatever you want. Linny explained helplessly. But what I want to tell you is that people like us can't have love. I can die at any time. I can't give you what you want. If you are wise, you should give up quickly. This is good for both you and me. I won't let go. In the future, I won't allow you to do such a dangerous job. Why don't you resign and accompany me? Yuning said overbearingly. Oh well, I don't like you. I have a girlfriend. Linny really had no choice but to say so. Yuning was silent. Linny's explanation made her a little overwhelmed. If Linny simply refused her love, then Yuning didn't care. But Linny said that he already had a girlfriend. What hope did she have? Okay, that's all I have to say. Don't mention this topic again. Linny saw that Yuning was silent, and suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that his words had some effect. No! Yuning suddenly exclaimed, you are lying. Didn't you say before that people like you can't have love? Then where did you get a girlfriend? Linny didn't expect his own reason to be so contradictory. He suddenly felt a little embarrassed. However, in this case, the more he explained, the worse it would get. Linny helplessly turned his head and ignored Yuning. After a while, Yuning saw that Linny still turned his head and ignored her. Yuning first compromised, okay, let's not talk about these things. Let's talk about something else. Okay. What do you want to talk about? Linny asked. Tell me how you spent your previous Valentine's Day? Yuning asked. If I didn't deliberately think about it, I wouldn't even know that yesterday was Valentine's Day. It was the same before. If I wasn't performing tasks, I was staying at home. Linny said faintly, isn't it boring? In fact, I am such a boring person. This Valentine's Day, don't you think it's special? Yuning asked. Didn't you say not to talk about this topic? Linny didn't fall for it. Oh, then I'll tell you about my past? Yuning felt that she should let Linny understand her past. Maybe after she said it, Linny would tell her about his past. Otherwise, he would be embarrassed not to say it, right? Okay. Linny responded faintly. When I was young, Yuning began to talk about her past, and Linny listened quietly. He really listened carefully to understand the girl's past. Of course, these things could only be buried in the bottom of his heart. Gradually, the sky turned white and dawn came. And Yuning was also sleepy, and gradually fell asleep in Lin Yi's arms. Linny didn't refuse, but quietly enjoyed this moment of warmth. This Valentine's Day, Linny would always remember it in his heart, and never mention it again. Chapter 11:28. Guaranteed Success Vice Leader. He's a mystic mid-phase peak physical practitioner. Why would he listen to me? And when he came, you guys told me that he was here to help me, but he wasn't my underling, so my words were useless. Jiangwen smiled bitterly. I found him a lot of girls, but that fighter Li is a psychopath and he likes good girls. He wanted to force them to be his concubine, but unfortunately, that girl's lover is also a master, and he killed him with one punch. Jiangwen, you're not lying, are you? The deputy leader frowned. He always felt that killing fighter Li, who was a peak middle phase mystic class master, with one punch was a bit unimaginable. Vice leader, I wouldn't dare lie to you. I have the surveillance video of the whole process. I can send it to you immediately. Jiangwen said quickly. Okay, send it to me then. The vice leader saw how confident Jiangwen was, and guessed that he probably wasn't lying. He didn't know that Jiangwen was actually exaggerating, but from the video he couldn't tell. After all, fighter Li was already dead, and the dead couldn't tell the truth. Alright, Jiangwen said, Vice Leader, what about my arena here? I can't do without someone holding the line. What if there's someone I can't handle? Don't worry. I'll report this to the leader, and we'll send another master as soon as possible. The vice leader said, but try to find out who the person who killed fighter Li is, and how strong he is. Vice leader, if you send another person, he won't be as arrogant as fighter Li, will he? If he causes trouble again, I can't do anything about it. Jiangwen smiled faintly. You don't know, Songshan is a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There are a lot of masters, and if he causes trouble, he'll be easily killed. I'll think about that, the new master. I'll order him to listen to you, and not let him cause trouble. The vice leader said. Then I can still restrain them. Jiang Wen was overjoyed. This was exactly the effect he wanted. He had a master by his side, and if he couldn't order them around, it'd be very annoying. Now that Fighter Li was killed, Jiang Wen was in control again. So he continued, Vice Leader, and the person who killed Fighter Li, I suggest that we stop investigating. This kind of person could kill Fighter Li with one punch, a mystic mid-phase peak master. You can imagine how strong he is. It's better not to make enemies with this kind of person, since he's only here to seek revenge from Fighter Li. Then with Fighter Li dead, he shouldn't be looking for trouble with the boxing field anymore. Why bother provoking him? You're right, if he really did kill Fighter Li with one punch, then he'd be at least a mystic late phase, maybe even an earth class. Someone like that, if we don't have a deep grudge against him, it'd be best if we don't make an enemy out of him. However, Fighter Li's death would have been in vain. The vice leader thought that Jiang Wen's words made sense. He deserved his death, we don't need to avenge him. My main goal is to make money. If I get into trouble like this, then how can I open this boxing field? Jiang Wen didn't care at all about Fighter Li's death, and he didn't even think about avenging him. Jiang Wen, on the other hand, felt that it was best not to involve the boxing field. I'll discuss this with the leader first. After all, he's from the Firewolves gang. If he died for nothing, then wouldn't it seem like we're afraid of him? If word got out, it'd affect our reputation. The vice leader sighed and said, it'd also disappoint the brothers of the Firewolves gang. Then if you want to investigate, you better send more masters to investigate. I don't dare. You know that I'm just a normal person. I can't participate in a fight between masters like this. Jiang Wen really didn't want to make enemies for Fighter Li. He was living quite a carefree life now. He had 2 kidneys and he could be considered a complete person. He was doing business every day, and other than getting Mengyao, Jiang Wen didn't have anything else to ask for. So Jiang Wen didn't want to go against those masters at all. That's fine, you should focus on running the boxing field. The leader and I will investigate this, the vice leader said. After hanging up, Jiang Wen finally breathed out in relief. It seemed like he had successfully removed the responsibility. Since there was no evidence, he just pushed all the blame onto Fighter Li. Jiang Wen didn't object when Fighter Li wanted to make Yu Yuanyuan a concubine. But Fighter Li didn't investigate Yu Yuanyuan's background clearly. Jiang Wen made a call and called Scorpion in. Master Wen, you're looking for me? Scorpion asked respectfully. Yes, I'll tell you, I've already told the vice leader about Fighter Li, and now we're on the same page. Jiang Wen said and told Scorpion what he said before. Did you hear that? If the higher-ups investigate, you tell them. Don't worry, Master One, I've remembered it. Scorpion nodded and praised Master One. You really are a genius. This way, the masters sent by the higher-ups will be under your control. Humph, of course. How can they not be under my control when they're working in my field? Jiang Wen felt that he was very smart too. Not only did the higher-ups not pursue Fighter Li's case, but they also sent masters who would be under his control. Right, you better go comfort Yu Yuanyuan. Tell her and that Go Dan that it was all Fighter Li's doing. It has nothing to do with our boxing field. Fighter Li is already dead. I hope she won't vent her anger on our boxing field. You know what to do, right? I understand, Master One. If it doesn't work, I'll just give her some money. I'll definitely take care of it. Scorpion knew what Jiang Wen was thinking. That Erguden was too strong. He could kill Fighter Li with one punch. He couldn't afford to offend someone like that. If he went back unhappy and came looking for trouble again, would the boxing field still be open? Okay, go do it. Jiang Wen waved his hand, signaling Scorpion to leave. Chapter 1129. What's wrong with you? Jiang Wen had gotten rich recently, and he'd been playing with a lot of girls, including some virgin schoolgirls, but Jiang Wen wasn't very interested in them. He still thought that Meng Yao was better. Childhood sweethearts, after all. It was hard to forget. Jiang Wen realized that he liked Meng Yao more and more. Uncle Chu, it's me. After leaving the arena, Jiang Wen got into his Ferrari and called Peng Zhan. "Oh, Jiang Wen, what's up?" Peng Zhan asked faintly. Peng Zhan's impression of Jiang Wen had never been too good, especially after the incident last time where Jiang Wen tried to take advantage of the situation. His impression of Jiang Wen had taken a nosedive. "Uncle Chu, where are you? I'd like to pay you a visit," Jiang Wen said. "I'm at the company, I'm not done yet. There's no need for a visit, we can talk on the phone." Peng Zhan's attitude was clear. He didn't want to meet Jiang Wen. Jiang Wen wasn't happy after being rejected. He cursed in his heart. "Peng Zhan, you old bastard. If it weren't for Lin Yi, Peng Zhan Industries would have been destroyed a long time ago. You're still at the company? Go stay at home." "Haha, it's nothing. It's just that I haven't seen you in a while, Uncle Chu. I just wanted to say hello." On the surface, Jiang Wen was still very polite. He hadn't fallen out with House Chu yet, so it didn't matter if Peng Zhan didn't like him. "I see. Thank you," Peng Zhan said faintly. "I still have things to do. I'll hang up first if there's nothing else." "Uncle Chu, I really wanted to help you last time. You didn't agree to my conditions, but I was planning to help you in the dark. I didn't expect Lin Yi to recover his strength so quickly. Haha, so I was late. I hope you don't blame me, I wasn't in a good situation back then," Jiang Wen explained. "I know. I don't blame you." Peng Zhan's tone was still calm. "All right, I won't disturb you then, Uncle Chu. Good luck with your work." Jiang Wen hung up depressed. He'd wanted to pay Peng Zhan a visit and then go to Meng Yao's villa with him, but it seemed like his wish was dashed. He'd have to go by himself if he wanted to go to Meng Yao's villa. Lin Yi and the Miss didn't expect Jiang Wen to come at a time like this. Jiang Wen had tried to ask Meng Yao for her hand in marriage when House Chu was in trouble. Lin Yi knew about this, and so did the Mississippi. Lin Yi didn't cause trouble for Jiang Wen last time because Jiang Wen didn't do anything to harm House Chu. Jiang Wen went into hiding after that, so Lin Yi didn't bother with him. "Yao Yao, Lil Sis, long time no see. You're getting prettier and prettier." Jiang Wen handed the rose to Meng Yao. Meng Yao frowned. Although she was disgusted, she still took the flower and passed it to Shu. "Shu, this is for you." "Shu, this is for you, Shield Bro." "Oh." Yushu took the flowers and smiled at Lin Yi. "Shield Bro, this is for you." "Ha." Lin Yi took the flowers and looked at Jiang Wen's green face. A cold smile appeared on his face. Lin Yi always had the upper hand when fighting with Jiang Wen. As long as Jiang Wen didn't do anything out of line, Lin Yi wouldn't do anything to him. Plus, Lin Yi had some understanding of Jiang Wen's background. Jiang Wen wasn't a big deal, but Jiang Wen had the fire wolves behind him. Lin Yi didn't want to make too many enemies for House Chu. The Xiao family's problem wasn't solved yet. If the power behind Jiang Wen jumped out again, it'd be troublesome. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't care. He could just leave and go back to Star West Village. There was old Lin and Air Gooden. Anyone who came would die. But House Chu wasn't the same. If Lin Yi left, what would happen to the Miss and Shu? Jiang Wen had always wanted to kill Lin Yi, but he never succeeded. Lin Yi was too strong. Even with Fighter Li, he didn't dare fight Lin Yi head-on. Wasn't Ma Zhu strong? Didn't he get crippled by Lin Yi in the end? So Jiang Wen could only swallow his anger and act like he didn't care. He smiled. "What, aren't you going to invite me in? Yao Yao sis?" "Oh, please come in." Meng Yao was a polite person. She was annoyed by Jiang Wen, but she still moved aside to let Jiang Wen in because of their childhood friendship. But Meng Yao didn't give Jiang Wen any face after entering the villa. She continued watching TV with Yushu. Jiang Wen was going crazy when he saw the cartoon. He didn't want to watch it, and they didn't have anything in common. Even if he wanted to talk to Meng Yao, they wouldn't be able to. Ha ha ha. Meng Yao and Yushu burst into laughter as they watched the scene unfold on TV. Jiang Wen frowned. Was this funny? But for Meng Yao, he had to force himself to continue watching. He knew that Meng Yao and Yushu wouldn't talk to him until they finished watching the cartoon. He'd get scolded if he disturbed them. He watched for a while, but Jiang Wen still couldn't get into it. The only interesting thing was that the characters were a little funny. After a strange character appeared, Jiang Wen finally started laughing. But as he laughed, Jiang Wen felt that something was wrong. Meng Yao and Yushu weren't laughing. He was the only one. Jiang Wen stopped laughing when he saw Yushu's murderous gaze. He looked at Meng Yao and Yushu awkwardly. What are you laughing at? Is there something wrong with you? Yushu asked. Jiang Wen lowered his head awkwardly. Finally, the miss turned off the TV after the cartoon was over. Jiang Wen took the opportunity to ask, Yao Yao sis, it's almost the Labor Day holiday. What are your plans? Are you planning to go out and play? I'm planning to. Meng Yao understood what Jiang Wen wanted. He wanted to invite her and Yushu to go out and play during the holiday. Chapter 11:30. Not letting you go. Jiang Wen had always believed that feelings were something that needed to be nurtured. Only when two people spent a long time together could they develop feelings for each other. And so he kept creating opportunities for himself. Don't bother, we'll go on a road trip. Meng Yao rejected Jiang Wen's suggestion. She'd already discussed with Shu and Lin Yi that they'd go to the seaside the night after Lin Yi's product launch. A road trip? Jiang Wen wasn't expecting Meng Yao to choose a road trip. Disappointed. He'd been thinking of going somewhere more romantic abroad with Meng Yao, but it didn't seem like that was possible anymore. They could only do it around Songshan. But so be it. Jiang Wen couldn't control Meng Yao's thoughts and could only go along with her. A road trip is good. It's more relaxing and less stressful. Count me in. I'll go with you guys. There are some things that girls can't do, so leave it to me. Things like carrying bags, I can do it. No need, we have shield bro. You're too weak, you don't even have a kidney. You can't do anything heavy. Yushu didn't like Jiang Wen either. I have a kidney now, I got another one. I'm a normal person now. Jiang Wen quickly explained. He was afraid that Meng Yao would misunderstand that his kidney wasn't working properly and affect their sex life after marriage. I'm going with a classmate. There's someone else other than me and Shu. It's not convenient for you to go with us. Meng Yao rejected Jiang Wen's suggestion. Jiang Wen frowned. He didn't expect Meng Yao to be going with a classmate. But he didn't plan on giving up. This was a good opportunity. It's fine. How about this, I'll drive with Taizao too. We'll go our own way, what do you think? Up to you. Meng Yao said faintly. There was no reason for her to reject Jiang Wen's suggestion. It wasn't like she could restrict his freedom after all. It was his right to go wherever he wanted. It didn't matter as long as he didn't interfere with her. Then it's settled. When are you guys leaving? Where are you planning to go? I'll prepare beforehand. Jiang Wen's face lit up when Meng Yao agreed. Let's go to the beach. We'll leave on May 1st. Meng Yao didn't try to hide it. It wasn't much of a secret. She knew Jiang Wen's personality very well. He wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. If she didn't tell him, he might even send people to her house to follow her. All right, Taizao and I will be waiting for you at the entrance of your villa on the afternoon of May 1st. Jiang Wen didn't expect Meng Yao to be this easygoing. Could it be that Meng Yao was actually welcoming him? Jiang Wen knew that Meng Yao was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, so he couldn't be blamed for thinking that way. Jiang Wen was very excited at the thought of this possibility. He wanted to go back and discuss with Taizao how he was going to pick up girls. Having achieved his goal, Jiang Wen didn't stay any longer. He stood up and said goodbye to Meng Yao and Yushu, leaving the villa. Yao Yao, how did you tell him our destination? Yushu asked Meng Yao curiously after Jiang Wen left. It's all for you and Xiao Xiao, isn't it? What would you two do if you didn't have a villain? Meng Yao smiled. Oh Yao Yao, so you're that bad too. Yushu realized that Yao Yao wanted Jiang Wen to go so that it would be more fun. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile after hearing Meng Yao's words. So the miss had a side effect too? In fact, Meng Yao really couldn't take it anymore. She had no choice but to do this. Under normal circumstances, Meng Yao didn't like to play tricks on people. Let's go upstairs, I'm sleepy. Meng Yao didn't say anything else and turned to the stairs. Yushu and Lin Yi waved goodnight and ran upstairs with Meng Yao. Lin Yi shook his head and went to Faubert's room. Lin Yi wanted to talk to Faubert about Jiang Wen. On this road trip, it was fine if Jiang Wen behaved himself, but if he tried anything funny, Lin Yi wouldn't let him go. But he still needed to discuss the specifics with Faubert. When Lin Yi pushed open the door to Faubert's room, Faubert was practicing. Seeing Lin Yi come in, Faubert smiled and opened his eyes. Linny, you're here. Faubert, how are you? Did you improve? Linny asked about Faubert's strength. Although I'm only one step away from the mystic class, the spiritual energy in this area is too thin. It takes a long time to absorb the spiritual energy. I won't be able to break through in a short time. Uncle Fu shook his head. In fact, Linny had guessed this as well. He was just asking casually. Linny knew about this as well. He'd only broken through to golden class with old Lin's treasures. Naturally, he knew how thin the chi in the natural world was. It was a world of difference compared to the jade space. This was also why Linny was only golden class for more than 10 years. But after discovering the secret of the jade space, he broke through a few levels. Right, Faubert, Jiangwen came just now. Linny changed the topic. I have a feeling that he's up to no good. What do you think? Jiangwen has always had a crush on Yao Yao. And he's someone who doesn't stop until he gets what he wants. Faubert knew Jiangwen's personality very well, and his words hit the nail on the head. Then Faubert, you mean? Linny asked. Lily, how much do you know about the firewolves? Faubert didn't answer Linny's question and asked instead. The firewolves? I don't know much about them. Linny shook his head. It's because I don't know much about them that I didn't do anything to Jiangwen. We're in troubled times right now, and I don't want to make more enemies. That's right. Faubert nodded. You're right. The firewolves may be a gang, but they're not to be underestimated. They've been established for a long time, and when I was the young master, the name of the firewolves was well known among the hidden houses and small sects. It could be said that the firewolves are no weaker than the hidden houses and small sects. Oh, the firewolves are that powerful? Linny blinked. Yes, Jiangwen is from the firewolves, but I don't know Hao Sin's position in the firewolves, so it's better not to touch him for now. Faubert nodded. You can teach him a lesson, but you can't kill him. Chapter 1131. Grandpa Gooden misses. You looked at Gooden, and the more she looked at him, the more she liked him. She felt that this guy was a good person, simple and friendly, quite a good match for her daughter. She didn't think as much as Yuren, just thinking that Gooden was a good person was enough. But Yuren was thinking about how to make Gooden stay. Gooden was strong, and if he stayed in the hardware shop to help him, his business would be very successful. Yuanyuan, on the other hand, was much more natural in front of her savior. Zhou Jiaming, thank you so much for this. I'm really sorry before, I thought you were just joking. I didn't think that you would actually kill that fighter Li. Haha. Gooden smiled honestly. You can call me Air Gooden. I'm not used to my real name. Actually, I didn't do much. It's just a small matter for me to deal with that kind of filthy brat. I'll just call you Zhou Jiaming Air Gooden. I don't think it sounds good. Yuanyuan couldn't bring herself to say such a vulgar name. As the two were talking, there was a knock on the door. Yuren and Mrs. Yu jumped in fright. They were worried that Fighter Li would be killed by Air Gooden, and that the arena would send people to take revenge. But with Air Gooden here, it gave them some confidence. Now that someone really knocked on the door, they couldn't help but feel nervous again. Old man, it wouldn't be an enemy, would it? Mrs. Yu's face was shocked, not daring to open the door. I'll go see. Yuren was nervous as well, but last time, Fighter Li sent the door flying with one punch, and Yuren felt that he couldn't pretend he wasn't home. He could only force himself to open the door. Uncle Yu, I'll go with you. Gooden stood up, wiping the oil off his mouth nonchalantly as he walked to the door with Yuren. With Gooden with him, Yuren was much more at ease. He came to the door and asked carefully, Who is it? Yuren? I'm Scorpion. Scorpion was ordered by Jiangwen to send money to Yuren's family. It's someone from the arena. Yuren's face tensed up as he looked at Gooden carefully. Gooden didn't care. He opened the door and looked coldly at Scorpion. Who are you? What do you want? I am Xiao Luozi. I am here to apologize to Yuren and Yu Yuanyuan. Scorpion shivered when he saw it was Gooden. If it weren't for the fact that he had a mission, he would have turned and run already. Who was Air Gooden? He was someone who could kill Fighter Li with one punch. Would Scorpion dare mess with him? Little Scorpion? How dare a person like you call Uncle Yu by his name? Do you want to die? Gooden's eyes went wide as he raised his hand, about to slap him. 'Grandpa Gooden raised his hand, about to slap him. 'Grandpa Gooden, please spare me.' Xiao Luozi's legs softened and he knelt on the ground. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. 'Uncle Yu, I'm here to apologize to you. Is your brain made of *T? Gooden wasn't happy you call me Grandpa Gooden, and Uncle Yu is Uncle Yu, so you're saying that I'm older than Uncle Yu? Are you trying to drive a wedge between us?' 'Yes, it's Ancestor Yu, Ancestor Yu.' Scorpion quickly changed his words. He didn't think that Gooden would be so logical. 'All right. Hurry up and tell me what you're here for,' Gooden said impatiently. 'Grandpa Gooden, I'm here on behalf of the arena to apologize to Ancestor Yu. That fighter Lee is so arrogant, and it's all because of him. I hope you can be magnanimous and don't take it out on us,' Scorpion said pitifully. 'All right, I got it. What else do you want?' Gooden said impatiently. 'This is a bank card with 1 million. It should have been won by Ancestor Yu, but because of Fighter Lee's interference, Ancestor Yu lost.' Scorpion quickly took out a bank card and handed it over. 'Please accept it.' Gooden took it and gave it to Yuren before turning to Scorpion. 'All right, get the fuck out. I don't have time to deal with mule people like you.' That's... Yuren had never seen such a huge bank. He was so shocked that he didn't dare take it. But after hearing Gooden's confirmation, Scorpion was already running away. Yuren had the bank. There was no way he could return it. At this moment, Yuren and his family breathed a sigh of relief. Scorpion came personally to apologize, and didn't come to question them. This meant that the underground arena was afraid of Gooden. Not only did they not dare to cause trouble for him, but they were also afraid that Gooden would cause trouble for them again. That was why they gave him this 1 million credit card. Yuren felt like he was dreaming as he held the 1 million bank. He had 1 million just like that? With this money, not only would he be able to buy a decent house, but he would also be able to rent a bigger shop in the market and expand his business. This was a blessing in disguise before tonight. Yuren was still in a bad mood, but now happiness came so quickly that he couldn't even get used to it. 1 million. I have 1 million now. Yuren held the bank. He couldn't stop laughing. However, before he could laugh twice, Yuanyuan snatched it away. 'What are you doing?' Yuren jumped. 'Zhou Jiaming asked for this money, we should give it to him,' Yuanyuan said as she passed the card to Gooden. 'Take this card. You took such a big risk for our family. It's only right that you take this money.' 'I don't want it.' Gooden scratched his head and smiled honestly. 'I don't need money. I live here, I have food and drinks, I don't need money.' 'Yeah, Lil Zhou lives here, why does he need money?' 'Yuanyuan, why are you so stupid? You're giving him money, are you trying to chase him away?' Yuren glared at his daughter and snatched the bank. 'That's a lot of money, I'll keep it first.' Yuren was a greedy man, and he recovered from the shock in just a blink of an eye. How could he bear to give away that 1 million? But then again, if Yuren wasn't greedy, why would he go to the arena and get scammed? Yuanyuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at her father's greedy face. 'I'm sorry my dad's like that. It's fine, I really don't need money.' Gooden had food and drinks, and his only goal was to find Lin Boss. Money was useless. Chapter 1132. Chapter 1130. New product launch. But Gooden's generosity and passion left a good impression on Yuanyuan. Every girl when they were young would fantasize about their future partner. A tall prince on a white horse, with a good character and a sense of justice. Yuanyuan didn't know what other people thought, but that was what she thought. But a few days ago, Yuanyuan's life was filled with darkness. Her dream was shattered, and she could only follow Fighter Lee for the rest of her life. Yuanyuan didn't think of herself as a beauty, but she was still a conservative girl. Deep in her bones, she wanted to be loyal to one man. So she thought that following Fighter Lee for the rest of her life was enough. But the situation changed. Gooden was like a god descending from the heavens, coming to her side. It was as if he was sent by the heavens, solving all her problems for her. Such a powerful, arrogant Fighter Lee was killed by him with one punch. If Yuanyuan had to choose, she'd naturally fall for a good man like Gooden. He was passionate and full of justice, and he wasn't greedy either. He gave her a sense of security. Unknowingly, Yu Yuanyuan had a good impression of Gooden. The story of the hero saving the beauty was old, but it was a story that never changed. Gooden and Yuanyuan were in this situation. The Xiao family was getting more and more powerful these days, and all the businessmen and rich people were lining up to work with the Xiao family. The Xiao family's position was set in stone, and it was only a matter of time before they became a noble house on the same level as House Yu. The Xiao family's two brothers couldn't stop smiling. It could be said that after old Zhao's death, the two Xiao family brothers were this happy. They didn't have to worry about the Xiao family's future anymore. Although the Xiao family was working for the hidden house Pai, it didn't matter. Wasn't House Yu also working for the hidden house Yu? They were both Yu, and they were from the same lineage, but everyone knew what was going on. Second brother, our Xiao family didn't even invest a single cent, and we already have 3 businesses. We're just borrowing our connections and name. It's really worth it. Xiaoji really liked this kind of investment method, where he could get something for nothing. Yeah, our Xiao family really got a blessing in disguise. Speaking of which, this matter was caused by sister-in-law, so you should stop scolding her. If it weren't for her, how could our Xiao family be where it is today? Xiao Ben remembered that his brother's attitude towards his sister-in-law was still very bad, and he even took her car keys. The two brothers had been busy with work these days and neglected Go Huli. Now that they calmed down, Xiao Ben realized that all this had something to do with Go Huli. Oh, if that was the case, it did make sense. I'll go see her. Xiaoji nodded upon hearing Xiao Ben's words. He felt that his brother's words made sense, so he turned around and went upstairs. When the old man passed away, Xiao Ben thought about fighting for the position of the head of Xiao family, but now, although his brother was the head of the house, he couldn't make any decisions. Even things like persuading his sister-in-law had to be decided by Xiao Ben. This made Xiao Ben feel that he was no different from the head of the house. Xiao family's big and small matters were all decided by him. His brother was just a name, so he didn't want to fight for the head of the house. It was good this way. Xiaoji went upstairs and pushed open Go Huli's door. These 2 days, Xiaoji didn't sleep on the same bed with Go Huli, and forced her to stay in the guest room alone. He didn't give her any face either. Go Huli knew that an important person came to Xiao family, but Xiaoji didn't tell her the details, so she didn't dare to ask. She stayed in her room and watched TV, not daring to go out. Seeing Xiaoji push open the door, Go Huli was overjoyed and quickly stood up. "Ji bro, you're here? Huli. I've neglected you these past few days, are you mad?" Xiaoji smiled as he looked at Go Huli. The more he looked at her, the more he liked her. Go Huli was old and not as young as she used to be, but Xiaoji was more and more interested. "I wouldn't dare." Go Huli jumped and said in fear, "I'm a person at fault, Ji bro. I'm happy that you're not blaming me. How could I be mad?" "Haha, what did you do wrong? You did the right thing." Xiaoji waved his hand and laughed. "You did a series of things, and now it seems like it was really good. If you didn't knock into Uncle Pai, the hidden house Pai wouldn't have sent a master here, and they wouldn't have been able to cooperate with Xiao family. Xiao family's status is higher than a rocket." "Ah?" Go Huli paused, thinking that Xiaoji was being sarcastic, but his expression didn't seem like it. She said carefully, "Is that so? God is blessing Xiao family, giving us a blessing in disguise." "Yes, that's right, well said. God is blessing Xiao family." Xiaoji laughed, "But now that Xiao family is strong, you don't need to keep a low profile anymore. You need to keep a high profile. That's the only way to show how strong Xiao family is. You need to be arrogant." "I know." Go Huli was overjoyed. Arrogance and acting cool were her favorites, and she was overjoyed when she heard that Xiaoji really wanted her to go out and act cool. In the blink of an eye, it was the 1st of May. Today was the day of the press conference of Xuemin's medical company. During this period of time, the reputation of the Guan Xuemin Medical Company could be said to be like the sun in the sky, especially after the poisoning incident of the first high school students was solved. People from all walks of life were waiting for the Guan Xuemin Medical Company to launch an amazing product. They had high expectations for the Guan Xuemin Medical Company. Linny wasn't attending as a staff member, Nor was he attending as a guest. He was keeping a low profile just like the people who were there to watch the show. Since the conference was held in the open air, Fatty Lai didn't stop the normal people from watching, but he hired professional security to maintain order. Lin Yi, Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao attended the press conference together. Xu wanted to join in the fun too, but the miss dragged her to the supermarket to buy the things they needed for the trip. Xu wasn't too happy, but considering Xiao Xiao's condition, she had no choice but to tolerate it for now. Chapter 1133. Chapter 1131. Trouble again, huh? Sure. Xiao Xiao's idea wasn't bad. Lin Yi didn't think that with a big customer like Feng Tianlong, the company's sales would go up another level. One had to know that secret agents were the biggest customers of these injury medicines, and the demand for them was terrifying. Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine was different from Dr. Kang's golden creation medicine. Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine's formula was normal, and it wasn't limited by the raw materials. The production could be expanded infinitely, and so they could have as much as they wanted. Lin Yi didn't have to worry about the demand. This type of medicine was different from the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing. There was no need to do hunger marketing, and they could just sell it on a large scale. Kong Mingming stood in the crowd, coldly watching the bustling scene. He was a little jealous. There were so many reporters here, and many of them were uninvited. Kong Xiaoming didn't like the fact that so many people were paying attention to a newly established company. I'll show you guys later. Kong Mingming spat on the ground. His purpose for coming here was to disrupt the product launch of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. Although House Kong had started to control the supply channels for the rare materials, and they were willing to pay a high price to buy them back, House Kong felt that Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company should have some in stock, or else they wouldn't have held a product launch. What was the point of launching a product without a product? Has everything been arranged? Kong Mingming turned to Wang Shubin and asked. Don't worry, Master Ming. Everything has been arranged. The patients have been found, and the reporters have been arranged. Wang Shubin nodded. Okay, that's good. Good job. Kong Mingming nodded. He was thinking about how he could get the recipe for the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing from Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. Only then would House Kong soar. At 9 in the morning, Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company's product launch officially began. Guan Shuamin, Fatty Lai, and Kong Xiaobo walked up to the VIP stage and sat down. The crowd erupted into a round of applause. Fuck. Kong Xiaobo is really arrogant. He can actually become a vice president. I'm so angry. Kong Mingming cursed unhappily. In his opinion, this cousin of his was simply incompetent. To think that a trash picker like him would have such a day. He'll be busy in a moment. Wang Shubin laughed disapprovingly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the product launch of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. I'm the vice president of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, Kong Xiaobo. Kong Xiaobo was the one speaking. This was arranged by Fatty Lai to train him. Fatty Lai was used to this kind of scene, and Guan Shuamin, as an authoritative figure in the medical world, had attended all kinds of events. The only one who hadn't experienced it was Kong Xiaobo. Although Kong Xiaobo was nervous, he knew that this was a test for him. So, he had prepared the script for the product launch many days ago. Kong Xiaobo began to introduce the product of this product launch, Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine. Although everyone had heard about the miraculous effects of this medicine and Dr. Kang's golden creation, when they saw the product launch today, everyone sighed in admiration at the cheap price of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company's products. Dr. Kang's golden creation cost 299 yuan per bottle, while Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine only costs 199 yuan. There was a difference of 100 yuan between the two. To a normal person, this was not a small amount. How many hundred yuan did they earn in a month? So, as long as Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine was as good as Miracle Dr. Guan's, everyone would go into the arms of Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine. For daily consumables, customers didn't have high loyalty. They would use whoever was cheaper and better. Unless they didn't lack money. 199? Selling at the cost? Kong Mingming was stunned. He didn't expect the price of Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine to be so low. Including the cost and distribution fees, there was almost nothing left to be earned. Was Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company trying to destroy the market with a low price? He had to tell his grandfather about this as soon as possible so that he could take countermeasures. So, Kong Mingming sent a message to his grandfather and told him the price of Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine. Looking at Kong Xiaobo introducing the effects and characteristics of the injury medicine, Linny nodded slowly. After a period of experience, Kong Xiaobo had matured a lot. At least in terms of business, he was a lot stronger than before. Next, it was time to answer questions from the reporters. Most of the reporters here knew about Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company because of the poisoning incident in Songshan's first school. They had a good impression of this company, so their questions were all positive and not too tricky. However, there were always accidents. There was a reporter who came to the product launch with the attitude of looking for trouble. This person was Ken Lang. Previously, he was hired by Zhao Qibing to ruin Pengzhan Industries and Songshan's first school. In the end, this Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company interfered and ruined his plan. He had been holding a grudge against them for a long time. This time he was trying to find a way to cause trouble. Coincidentally, a person named Wang Shebing found him and gave him 50,000 yuan to cooperate with him to cause trouble. The dire wolf was even more pleased to accept the offer. This product launch didn't require a reporter's ID, and anyone could enter the venue. It was convenient for Ken Lang, who was a miscellaneous force. When the others were almost done with their questions, Ken Lang raised his hand and asked, "I heard that similar medicines are sold for 299 yuan in the market. Yours is only 199 yuan. Is there a problem? I heard that the cost is more than this?" Kong Xiaobo answered a lot of positive questions before, so he let his guard down. When he suddenly heard Ken Lang's words, he suddenly became nervous again. Fortunately, he had rehearsed a similar situation before, so he didn't have any stage fright. He smiled slightly and answered, "May I ask, how do you know that the cost is more than this? As far as I know, this is a trade secret. Only the core members of the medical company know about it, right?" Although Kong Xiaobo didn't say it clearly, he had already hinted that Ken Lang was sent by the competitor to look for trouble. He believed that everyone present could understand. Originally, Ken Lang thought that Kong Xiaobo was young and inexperienced, so he was easy to bully. That was why he asked this question. He didn't expect this kid to be so tricky. It made it difficult for him to deal with him. The reporters present looked at Ken Lang with disdain. They wanted to see what he could say. Chapter 1134. The Injured Person. I'm here today to seek justice for the victims. Someone used your medicine, and not only did it not stop the bleeding as you said, it even caused the wound to fester. I've brought him here today. And the purpose is to expose a black-hearted businessman like you in front of everyone. The dire wolf accepted Wang Shubin's money, so naturally, he would follow Wang Shubin's orders. Everyone, look at my hand. After using Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine, it's completely festered. I almost had my arm amputated. A dark and thin man standing next to crippled wolf suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs. He stretched out his hand wrapped in gauze and shook it as he shouted at the people present. Wow, it's that serious. The other people who were hired by the direwolf to pretend to be ordinary people also sighed. It seems like this company is really unreliable. Everyone, don't buy it. This kind of thing that hasn't been tested by the market won't work. It's better to buy the more expensive Dr. Kang's Golden Creation medicine. Yes, this company is really a scam. Another person also said in agreement, medicine isn't like other things, you can't just use it like that. Another person added. The more people said, the more people who didn't know the truth were misled and started to doubt the products of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. Everyone quiet down. Kong Xiaobo wasn't in a hurry at this moment. He smiled and looked at the crowd, then looked at the victim who raised his hand, and said with concern, "Patient, is your hand okay? If there's a problem, you should go to the hospital as soon as possible. Don't stay here, what if it gets infected? What do you mean? Are you chasing me away? Everyone look, he's feeling guilty. The person who raised his hand shouted, I'm just worried about you. Kong Xiaobo waved his hand. Our Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company is holding a product launch today. The product will only be sold after today. It has never been sold in the market before. May I ask this patient, where did you buy your injury medicine? Could it be some other brand that you remembered wrongly? Quack. The patient froze and didn't know what to do. He was paid to mess around, and the lines were given to him by the dire wolf. How would he know that Miracle Dr. Guan's medicine hadn't started selling yet? Then where did his injury medicine come from? Could it be that it was stolen from the company? He was not stupid. Naturally, he would not say that. If he said that, not only would he not be able to frame them, but he would also be arrested by them. They could totally say that you stole a test product, not a finished product. I think I remembered wrongly. The patient suddenly blushed and walked away dejectedly. Residual Wolf did not investigate this at all in advance. Today's matter was just his usual way of blackmailing people. How could he know that their medicine had not been on the market yet? It seems that this patient really remembered wrongly. Then let's continue to answer the reporter's questions. Kong Xiaobo smiled and continued. At this time, the people present suddenly realized that this patient was a liar. He was probably not instructed by a competitor, or he was here to extort money. The dire wolf clenched his teeth. He was very angry. Fortunately, he had a second trump card. However, Kong Mingming was very angry. He stared at Wang Shubin and said, You found this person? What the hell? Not only did he not slander Miracle Dr. Guan, but he also brought trouble to himself. Let people think that there is a problem with our Dr. Kang's medicine? I'm sorry, Master Ming. This person was found by the dire wolf. I didn't know. Wang Shubin carefully apologized. This dire wolf is also an idiot. How did you find someone like him? Kong Mingming said unhappily. I had no choice. In Songshan we don't have any connections, and we don't know any reporters. I had to spend a lot of effort to contact this dire wolf online. Wang Shubin said with a bitter smile. Okay, have we arranged our own people? Kong Mingming waved his hand. Since this matter had nothing to do with Wang Shubin, Kong Ming didn't want to pursue it. Don't worry, Master Ming. There will be no problem this time. Wang Shubin nodded. I'm sorry. I was also deceived by that person. In our line of work we like to fight for justice. I am a righteous person, so please forgive me. The dire wolf said with a laugh. It's okay. A news reporter should have the spirit of doubt. Kong Xiaobo didn't agree with the dire wolf's words, but on the surface he was magnanimous. I accidentally cut my hand. At this moment a long-haired, cultured man suddenly exclaimed, Get out of the way, I'm going to bandage it. As he said this, the man pushed the dire wolf and wanted to walk past him. There is so much blood. You really need to bandage it. The dire wolf was shocked. But he suddenly said, Oh right. Isn't this the conference for Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine? Vice President Kong said that their medicine can stop bleeding immediately. Why don't you go and apply some? Okay. The man nodded gratefully and ran towards the rostrum. Vice President Kong, can you help me apply some injury medicine? Kong Xiaobo frowned. Things were obviously out of his expectation. This was something he didn't expect. Although this person's request was simple, it was strange for him to appear at this time. Especially since it was related to the dire wolf, Kong Xiaobo couldn't be too careful. What's wrong? Vice President Kong is reluctant to apply it for me. Or are you not confident in your company's medicine? This is a good opportunity to advertise. If your medicine is really good, then wouldn't I be a living advertisement? The man saw Kong Xiaobo hesitating and said immediately. Then I'll apply some for you. Fatty Lai spoke at this time. He took out a new bottle of Miracle Dr. Guan's injury medicine and opened it. Although Fatty Lai was suspicious of this person's sudden appearance, he still applied the medicine because of his confidence in Lin Yi. Generally speaking, Testing medicine on the spot was a marketing trick of the pharmaceutical company. But this person wasn't invited by Fatty Lai, so Fatty Lai was suspicious. Chapter 11:35. Why were they in such a hurry to leave? Just when everyone was anticipating, a miracle didn't happen. The man's wound didn't stop bleeding. It was still bleeding profusely. What injury medicine? He's obviously a liar. It's useless. Look at my hand, it's still bleeding, it's not getting any better. The man excitedly raised his bleeding hand and shouted to the people present, look, if the medicine they used at the press conference is so ineffective, then what effect can the retail version on the market have? Although most of the reporters had a good impression of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, the truth was right in front of them. The bleeding didn't stop, so they still took pictures of the scene. Fatty Lai was dumbfounded. Why wasn't it working? He had 100% trust in Lin Yi's medicine. Kong Xiaobo didn't know what to do. He had little experience, and now that there was an accident, he didn't know what to do. The long-haired man was still shouting, what bullsh *T Miracle Dr. Guan? Is he a liar? It's not working at all. Look at my hand, it's still bleeding. Just when Kong Xiaobo didn't know what to do, Lin Yi's voice rang in Kong Xiaobo's ears. This person is a hemophiliac. That's why he's bleeding profusely. It has nothing to do with the injury medicine. In order to prevent any accidents, Kong Xiaobo, Fatty Lai, and Guan Shuamin all wore wireless earphones so that Lin Yi could give them suggestions at any time. Kong Xiaobo, Fatty Lai, and Guan Shuamin heard it too. Kong Xiaobo and Fatty Lai didn't know much about hemophilia. But Guan Shuamin was a doctor, so naturally he knew about the disease. His eyes lit up after hearing Lin Yi's words. He stood up and said to the long-haired man, you're a hemophiliac. It's normal for your wound to bleed profusely. Normal medicine won't work on you. Even though he couldn't confirm that this person was a hemophiliac, he trusted Lin Yi. He knew how capable Lin Yi was. That was why he was so sure. Wow, the reporters were in an uproar. They didn't expect this long-haired young man to be a hemophiliac. What kind of person was Shuamin? Songshan's medical authority. If he said it was, then it must be. Some reporters didn't understand what hemophilia was, but it didn't matter. There were people around them who understood. They communicated with each other and understood that hemophiliacs' wounds would bleed non-stop. You're talking nonsense. How am I a hemophiliac? Aren't you framing me? What proof do you have? The long-haired young man didn't expect Guan Shuamin to be able to tell that he was a hemophiliac just by looking at him. He panicked, but he didn't have any evidence, so he tried to defend himself. Speak, who sent you here? What is your motive for coming here? Fatty Lai also treated Lin Yi's words like an imperial edict. If Lin Yi said this person was sick, then this person must be sick. The medicine doesn't work, so you start framing me? You think I'm a hemophiliac just because you say I'm a hemophiliac? I'd say you're an AIDS patient. The long-haired young man said angrily. Kong Mingming, Wang Shubing, and the direwolf didn't expect Guan Shuamin to be able to tell that this long-haired young man was a hemophiliac. This was out of their expectations. This person was hired by them. Wang Shubing had already promised him that as long as he cooperated, they would give him 50,000 yuan as a reward. Hemophilia itself was expensive, and this person only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. He could get 50,000 yuan just by messing around, so why not? Is old man Guan really a miracle doctor? He can even tell that I'm a hemophiliac? This isn't going to be easy. Kong Mingming frowned. Don't worry, this person is mentally strong. So what if he can tell? Will Guan Shuamin drag him to do a blood test on the spot? Hemophilia is something that can't be diagnosed with just by looking at it. As long as he refuses to admit it, there won't be a problem. After today's press conference, who can find him? Wang Shubing comforted him. Yes, that makes sense. Kong Mingming nodded and felt a little more at ease. At this time the direwolf spoke again. Everyone in the industry, look at this, these black-hearted businessmen. We should unite and expose them. I've said it before, 199 yuan isn't even enough to cover the cost. As far as I know, the raw materials for this golden creation are very rare. And this price is definitely a loss. Now everyone can see it, right? They must be using shoddy goods to make a profit and leave. The direwolf's words were very provocative, and his people in the crowd also stood up and echoed him, loudly criticizing the irresponsible behavior of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. Yeah, I'm going to fight you guys to the death as the victim today. If you don't give me an explanation, this isn't over. The long-haired man saw that everyone was supporting him, and he immediately became confident. You guys have to pay the price for framing me as sick. But at this time, Guan Shuamin showed his calm personality. He was an experienced expert, and naturally he wouldn't be afraid. He didn't argue and only looked at the long-haired man and said indifferently, "Whether you're sick or not, we'll know soon enough. I've already sent your photo to Director Chin of the Songshan First People's Hospital. If you've been treated in Songshan, and there's a medical record, then I believe we'll be able to find out your identity very soon." Ah! The long-haired man was stunned, and his face turned a little ugly. Of course he was a hemophiliac and he knew this very well. Most importantly, he did receive treatment at the Songshan First People's Hospital. In other words, all the experts in the hematology department at the Songshan First People's Hospital knew him. As long as they took his photo to the experts to identify him, his identity would be revealed. The long-haired man suddenly retreated, because his identity was about to be exposed, and he couldn't lie anymore. I still need to go to the hospital to stop the bleeding. I'm not going to waste time with you guys. You guys are all harming people, don't believe me anymore. The long-haired man was ready to leave. Leaving in such a hurry? Fatty Lai saw that the long-haired man was about to leave, and naturally, he didn't want him to leave just like that. Murder for money, my hand is bleeding non-stop, and this black-hearted company's medicine is not only useless, but they also won't let me go to the hospital. Everyone take a look. What kind of company is this? The long-haired man shouted loudly. Chapter 1136. Chapter 1134. Can Lang. Most of the people there shook their heads after hearing Fatty Lai's words. Who would go to the hospital with a small cut on their hand? At most, they just put a plaster on it. They didn't believe the long-haired man's words anymore. There was definitely something wrong with this person. He swore that he'd fight to the death with the man, and now he was in a hurry to leave after being exposed? Why do you care? I've changed my mind, I'll let you go. The long-haired man said as he backed away, ready to leave. Zhang Gongzi, your identity has been verified. You're a hemophiliac patient, and you're currently being treated by Dr. Su at the First People's Hospital. Do you have anything else to say? Guan Shuamin said directly after receiving the information from Dean Qin. That's bullsh*t. I don't know anything about the First People's Hospital, and I don't know Dr. Su Xiaohong. Huh. Zhang Gongzi was trying to defend himself, but he stopped halfway through his sentence because he had accidentally let it slip. The guy said it was Dr. Su, but he even said the doctor's name. How do you know Dr. Su's name is Su Xiaohong? I thought you didn't know about the First People's Hospital? Fatty Lai pointed at Zhang Gongzi and shouted. I'm leaving. Zhang Gongzi knew that he'd been exposed, and he didn't dare stay any longer. Boom! The crowd burst into laughter. It was obvious that this Zhang Gongzi was a liar, and he was here to cause trouble on purpose. Once he was exposed, he ran. Many people were embarrassed. They had almost misunderstood Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company. Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company was such a good company. They had helped the society and saved so many poisoned students. Moreover, they did it for free. How could they doubt their reputation and skills? Liar. He's a liar. Everyone take a picture and expose him. A reporter shouted. That's right. Who called this person over? I think it's Ken Lang. Another reporter knew Ken Lang, and he pointed at him. That's him, Ken Lang, that black-hearted bastard. Others might not know him, but I know that he's the scum of our industry. Ken Lang? I seem to have heard of him before. He is a guy who specializes in taking bribes to write some defamatory reports. Another person who knew Crippled Wolf also jumped out and pointed at Crippled Wolf and scolded. Crippled Wolf immediately became the target of public criticism. He shrunk his head and did not dare to stay any longer. Together with Zhang Gongzi, he left the press conference dejectedly. Our product is only selling for 199 yuan. Indeed, we might be envied and slandered by some of our peers. But it doesn't matter. Facts and time will prove that our product is the best. Kong Xiaobo finally let out a sigh of relief. This was the first product launch he was hosting. He naturally did not want to mess it up. And now it seemed that they had successfully passed through. Crippled Wolf was very angry. He was very unwilling in his heart, but there was no other way. He mounted the motorcycle on the roadside and started the car. But just after he took 2 steps forward, there was a loud bang. The motorcycle tire burst, and Crippled Wolf flew out directly. He fell on the roadside and his teeth fell out. He directly became a miserable wolf. Fuck, why'd the tire burst? Brutal Wolf was a little puzzled as he looked at the motorcycle that had fallen to the side of the road. It was already an unsightly sight. Ha ha ha. Bursts of laughter suddenly came from the crowd at the scene. Deadly Wolf deserved what he got today. Wow, Linny honey, your trick is pretty good. As expected, when he got on the motorcycle, the tire burst. Xiao Xiao excitedly clenched her fist. Linny smiled as well. Linny had noticed that this Crippled Wolf seemed to be suspicious. He didn't expect him to be such a cunning person. Linny thought about it. It seemed that Crippled Wolf was one of the reporters who came to the Songshan First Hospital when the students were poisoned. The first time Direwolf attacked, Xiao Xiao was so pissed that she wanted to mess with him. So Linny cooperated and told her where Direwolf's bike was, and how to make the bike's tires burst. And so Xiao Xiao did it and Crippled Wolf's tire really burst. Although this was nothing compared to the crimes he committed, under the eyes of the public, Linny couldn't do anything to him. He could only use some dirty tricks to harm him. Tang Yun looked at Xiao Xiao and Linny. They were really compatible. They even messed with others together. However, Tang Yun wasn't jealous. She was really happy for Xiao Xiao. She could live in happiness in the last moments of her life, and Tang Yun was happy too. If she couldn't get along with Lin Yi, Tang Yun would be worried and sad. This press conference, other than the unexpected appearance of Crippled Wolf, went on smoothly. Kong Xiaobo continued to answer a few questions from the reporters, and the press conference ended smoothly. What kind of bullshit tea did you find? What the hell did you do? Kong Mingming saw that things were messed up, and he was furious. He started scolding Wang Shebing. The success or failure of this matter was related to his ability and position in the Kong house. He had just gotten Dr. Kang's approval, and he wanted to continue working hard. Who knew that things would go wrong today? Master Ming, I'm sorry. I didn't know things would turn out like this. That Xuemin really knows something. He was able to tell that Zhang Gongzi was a hemophiliac. We didn't expect this. Wang Shebing said bitterly. There was no problem with our plan. It was an accident. That's right. It was an accident. What does it have to do with us? Kong Mingming thought about it and decided to report the truth to his grandpa. After all, it was an accident. Wang Shubin breathed a sigh of relief. Kong Xiaoming finally let it go. Kong Mingming called his grandpa. Hello? Is this grandpa? I'm Xiaoming. Xiaoming, how's it going? Your plan is pretty good. I told your uncle and dad about it and they all applauded it. Using a hemophiliac to mess things up, this is amazing. Miracle Dr. Kang's laughter came from the other side of the phone. Normal external medicine doesn't even work on hemophiliacs, let alone his injury medicine. Even our golden creation medicine isn't working. Miracle Dr. Kong laughed. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.